A single slap in a five-star restaurant. A billionaire's daughter humiliating a man she thought was nobody. Cameras rolling, wine thrown, insults echoing off marble walls. But what she didn't know would cost her family everything. $120 million gone in one signature, an empire crumbling in real time, and a secret so explosive it would rewrite the rules of power forever. This is the story of how one moment of cruelty destroyed a dynasty. Stay until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The Bellecourt wasn't just a restaurant. It was a statement. A cathedral of wealth where chandeliers dripped crystal tears over tables that cost more per night than most people earned in a month. Marble columns rose like pillars of judgment, their surfaces so polished you could see your sins reflected back. The air itself seemed expensive, perfumed with imported orchids and the kind of silence that only money could buy. This was where deals died or were born, where reputations were made or shattered between courses of food most people couldn't pronounce. Tonight, it would become a battlefield. Mara Wexler arrived like she always did, as if the world should pause to acknowledge her entrance. 6-inch Louboutin clicked against marble with the rhythm of a countdown timer. Her dress, a crimson silk number that probably cost more than a decent used car, clung to her like liquid fire. Diamond earrings caught the light with every turn of her head, sending fractured rainbows across nearby tables. Her hair, professionally styled into waves that looked effortlessly perfect, bounced with each step. She moved through the restaurant like a shark through water, beautiful, dangerous, and absolutely certain of her place at the top of the food chain. Behind her, 3 steps back as trained, walked her assistant Bethany, a nervous woman in her late 20s who'd learned long ago that Mara Wexler's shadow was both the safest and most dangerous place to be. Bethany clutched an iPad like a shield, her eyes darting between her boss and the reservation list, mentally calculating the evening's potential disasters. "Table 7, Bethany whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft classical music that floated through the space. "The reservation's under Wexler. Your father confirmed everything this morning. The candidate should already be—" "I don't care what my father confirmed." Mara cut her off without looking back, her voice sharp enough to slice through the refined atmosphere. "This whole thing is ridiculous. A blind date? Me? As if I need help finding anyone." She stopped abruptly, causing Bethany to nearly collide with her. "I agreed to this farce for exactly one reason, to prove to Daddy Dearest that his matchmaking skills are as outdated as his business strategies." Bethany's fingers tightened on the iPad. She'd heard this rant 3 times already, once in the car, once in the lobby, and now here. But she knew her role. Nod, agree. Never, ever contradict. "Of course, Miss Wexler. Should I have the sommelier prepare your usual champagne, Dom Perignon, the 2008, and make sure he knows I'll send it back if it's even half a degree off temperature?" Mara's eyes swept across the restaurant like searchlights. "Now where's this Prince Charming? My father thinks is so perfect for me." The maitre d' appeared as if summoned by her tone alone, his practiced smile never wavering despite the obvious tension radiating from his newest guest. "Miss Wexler, welcome. Your table is ready. Your companion arrived 15 minutes ago." "Punctual." Mara's laugh had edges. "How quaint. Lead the way." They wove through tables occupied by the city's elite. Tech moguls, entertainment executives, old money that didn't need to prove anything, and new money that couldn't stop trying. Conversations paused as Mara passed. Some looks held admiration, others disdain, but all held recognition. Mara Wexler was infamous in these circles. Beautiful, brilliant, and brutally honest about her belief that most people existed several tiers beneath her. Then they reached table 7. Colin Reddick sat with his back straight, hands folded on the white tablecloth, looking as out of place as a sparrow in a cage of peacocks. His shirt, a simple button-up in faded blue, had seen better days. Not dirty, not torn, but worn in the way that spoke of a wardrobe where each piece had to last. The collar was slightly frayed. One cuff had a small stain that no amount of washing had fully erased, probably motor oil or something mechanical. His pants were clean but clearly off the rack, and his shoes, though polished, couldn't hide their age or their origin from a discount store. But it was his hands that told the real story. Working hands, calloused palms, small scars across the knuckles, nails that were clean but bore the permanent shadows of someone who spent their days elbow-deep in machinery. These weren't hands that signed contracts. They were hands that built things, fixed things, created things from scratch. His face held a quiet dignity, strong jawline, dark hair beginning to gray at the temples, and eyes that seemed tired but kind. Crow's feet suggested he smiled often, though he wasn't smiling now. There was something almost sad about his stillness, like a man who'd shown up knowing he was about to be judged and found wanting, but showed up anyway because he'd given his word. When he looked up and saw Mara approaching, something flickered across his features. Not attraction, not hope, more like recognition. The look of someone seeing exactly what they'd expected, even if they'd hoped to be wrong. He stood, old-fashioned manners embedded so deep they were automatic. Mara stopped 3 feet away. Her eyes traveled from his worn shoes to his frayed collar, and her expression transformed from curiosity to something between amusement and disgust in under 2 seconds. "You've got to be kidding me." The words came out loud enough that 2 nearby tables went quiet. "This is who my father picked? This?" Colin's jaw tightened, but he extended his hand anyway. "Colin Reddick, it's nice to—" Mara stared at his offered hand like it was something dead. "Don't. Touch me with those worker hands." She turned to Bethany, who'd gone pale. "Get my father on the phone. Now." "Miss Vexler, perhaps we could sit down and—" Colin's voice was calm, measured. "Sit down?" Mara's laugh cut through the restaurant like breaking glass. "Next to you? In that shirt?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that somehow carried further than if she'd shouted. "Let me guess. You repair cars, fix refrigerators, clean pools?" Her eyes narrowed. "No, wait. You have that particular ode to desperation about you. You own a failing business, don't you? Something small and sad that's about 3 months from bankruptcy." Colin's face remained neutral, but his hands slowly lowered to his sides. "I own a repair shop, yes. Electronics, mostly. Some appliances. We do good work." "Good work?" Mara mimicked his tone mockingly. She turned to the growing audience of diners who'd given up any pretense of not watching. "Ladies and gentlemen, my father, Robert Vexler, CEO of Vexler Industries, worth $300 million, thought this was an appropriate match for his daughter." She gestured at Colin like he was an exhibit. "A man who probably had to save for 6 months to afford the valet parking." Bethany stepped forward, her voice desperate and low. "Miss Vexler, people are watching. Maybe we should—" "Let them watch," Mara's voice rang out. "Let everyone see what a joke this is." She pulled out her phone and Bethany's blood ran cold. Not the phone, not the Instagram, but Mara was already holding it up, camera pointed directly at Colin. "Say hi to my 3 million followers," she announced. "They're going to love this." "Please don't." Colin's voice remained quiet, but something in it, a note of genuine concern, made several nearby diners shift uncomfortably. "You don't need to do this." "Don't tell me what I need." Mara's finger was already moving across her screen. "Let's see." Title: Blind Date Disaster. Or maybe When Daddy Gets It Wrong. Actually, no. Her smile turned vicious. How about The Audacity of Poor People? She began narrating to her camera, her voice syrupy with false sweetness. "So my father, in his infinite wisdom, set me up on a blind date, and look what showed up." She panned the camera across Colin's outfit slowly, mockingly. "I mean, points for showing up, I guess? But sweetie, this isn't a soup kitchen. This is the Bellacourt. Do you even know what the appetizers cost here?" Colin stood perfectly still, his face a mask, but his hands had curled into loose fists at his sides. Not aggressive, just holding something back. Every instinct probably screaming at him to leave, to defend himself, to do something. But he did nothing, said nothing. Mara mistook his silence for weakness. "Cat got your tongue?" She lowered the phone but kept recording. "What's wrong? Not used to being around actual successful people? Let me guess. Your biggest business decision this week was whether to buy name brand or generic WD-40. A woman at the next table stood up. "This is inappropriate. You should stop." Mara didn't even glance at her. "Mind your own business, Karen." Back to Colin, she circled him like a predator, her phone capturing every angle. "You know what's really sad? You probably thought you had a chance. You probably went home and told your, what, roommate? Mother? Hey, I'm going out with a Vexler tonight. You probably practice conversation starters in the mirror. I have a daughter. Colin's voice cut through her monologue, quiet but firm. And I told her I was meeting someone for dinner, that's all. Mara's eyes lit up. A daughter. Oh, this keeps getting better. Let me guess? Single dad? Baby mama ran off? Or did you bore her to death talking about circuit boards and shop overhead? Something dangerous flashed in Colin's eyes. For just a moment, the mask cracked. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. The restaurant went dead silent. Mara blinked, processed, then, incredibly, horrifyingly, shrugged. Well, that's sad and all, but it doesn't change the fact that you're completely out of your league here. I mean, look at you. She gestured with her phone. You're like poverty cosplay. Did you think this shirt was acceptable? These shoes? They're clean. Colin's voice had gone very flat. They're what I have. What you have. Mara laughed, and it was genuinely cruel. That's the problem right there. People like you accept what you have. You settle, you don't aspire, you don't climb. You just exist in your little mediocre bubbles, fixing other people's broken things because you can't afford to buy anything that doesn't break. Bethany grabbed Mara's arm. We should go, right now. This has gone too far. Mara shook her off. I'm not done. She leaned closer to Colin, her voice dropping but still audible to everyone watching. You want to know the real reason my father set this up? It wasn't matchmaking. It was punishment. He wanted to remind me what happens if I don't play ball, don't marry within the right circles. He was showing me the alternative. She jabbed a finger toward Colin's chest. You're a warning label. This could be your life if you're not careful. Colin's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Mara saw something in them that wasn't hurt or embarrassment. It was something colder, something calculating. Are you finished? He asked quietly. Not even close. Mara turned to the maitre d', who looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Champagne. Now. The bottle I ordered. She looked back at Colin. Let's have a toast. To my father's terrible judgment, to ridiculous blind dates, and to... The sommelier appeared with the Dom Perignon, moving quickly, clearly hoping to defuse the situation. He poured 2 glasses with shaking hands. Mara lifted hers, her phone now propped against a champagne flute to keep recording hands-free. To knowing your place, she announced. Colin didn't touch his glass. What's wrong? Mara's voice turned mocking again. Not good enough for you? Oh wait, probably the first time you've seen champagne that costs more than your monthly rent, right? I don't drink, Colin said simply. Of course you don't. Probably can't afford to. Mara took a sip, her eyes never leaving his face. You know what really kills me? The sheer audacity. You actually thought, even for a second, that you belonged here, that you belonged at this table, with me. She set her glass down hard enough that champagne sloshed over the rim. Do you have any idea who I am? What my family is worth? 300 million, Colin replied, his tone neutral. You mentioned it already. And you? What are you worth? She pulled out her phone again, typing rapidly. Let's see. Reddick Repair. Oh God, there actually is a shop. She spun her phone around, showing the camera a grainy Google Maps image of a small storefront squeezed between a laundromat and a check cashing place. Ladies and gentlemen, this is his empire. Look at it. It's literally called Reddick Repair. Not even a creative name, just Reddick Repair. She scrolled down. Oh, the reviews are precious. Honest work at fair prices. Translation, cheap because it has to be. Fixed my TV in 1 day. How impressive. He can fix a TV. Someone give this man a Nobel Prize. Those reviews are from good people, Colin said quietly. People I help. Good people. Mara made air quotes. You mean poor people. Your people. She kept reading, her voice dripping with mockery. 3.7 stars. Can't even crack 4 stars. And look at this. Small shop, but they try hard. They try hard. Oh my God, that's like putting participant on your resume. A man in an expensive suit 3 tables over stood up. Young lady, that's enough. You're being cruel. Sit down, Grandpa, Mara snapped. This doesn't concern you. She turned back to Colin, and her expression was pure venom. You know what? I'm done with words. Let me show you exactly what I think of this entire pathetic situation. She picked up her champagne glass, still 3/4 full of liquid that cost $200 a glass, and threw it in Colin's face. The golden liquid hit him square in the chest, spreading across that worn blue shirt like blood. Champagne dripped from his collar, soaked through the fabric, ran down to his belt. The glass fell, shattering on the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. The restaurant gasped as one organism. Colin stood absolutely still, his eyes closed, champagne running down his face and neck. His chest rose and fell with deep, controlled breaths. When he finally opened his eyes, they held something Mara couldn't quite read. Not anger, not even hurt anymore. Something else. Feel better? He asked softly. Mara's hand was already moving before her brain caught up. The slap cracked across the restaurant like thunder, her palm connecting with Colin's cheek hard enough to snap his head to the side. Hard enough that her hand stung. Hard enough that people at tables 20 feet away flinched. The sound seemed to hang in the air, echoing off marble and crystal. Colin's head turned back slowly. A red handprint was already forming on his cheek, bright against his pale skin. He touched it gently, his fingers coming away as if he was surprised to find them there. Mara! Bethany lurched forward, her face white as paper. Oh my God! Oh my God! We need to... Shut up! Mara's voice was cold now, the mocking playfulness gone. He deserved it, showing up here thinking he could... You hit me! Colin's voice cut through hers. Not loud, not angry, just factual. Surprised, almost. I slapped you, Mara corrected, and you deserved it for wasting my time, for existing in my space, for... Colin reached into his pocket, and for a moment Bethany thought he might be reaching for a phone to call the police, or maybe something worse. But he pulled out a wallet, worn leather, probably 10 years old, held together with what looked like super glue at one corner. He opened it carefully, removed 2 20s, the only bills inside, Mara noticed with fresh disgust, and placed them on the table. What are you doing? Mara asked. The breadbasket. Colin nodded toward the untouched rolls on the table. I ate one before you arrived. This should cover it. He turned toward the door. Where do you think you're going? Mara's voice rose. We're not done here. You don't get to just walk away from me. Colin stopped, turned back, and when he spoke, his voice was so quiet that people leaned forward to hear. Yes, he said, I do. You can't just watch me. Colin adjusted his collar with as much dignity as a man could while soaked in champagne and wearing a handprint on his face. Thank you for dinner, or the lack thereof. I hope you got whatever you needed from this. He started walking again, his wet shirt clinging to his back, leaving a faint trail of champagne drops on the perfect marble floor. Mara's face flushed red. You're pathetic, she called after him. A pathetic, small, insignificant little man with a pathetic little life. You'll go back to your pathetic little shop and your pathetic little daughter, and you'll never ever be anything more than what you are right now, which is nothing. Colin's steps didn't slow, didn't speed up. He just kept walking, steady and sure, toward the exit. Did you hear me? Mara shrieked. You're nothing, nobody, a complete waste of space. Colin reached the door. The doorman, who'd watched the entire scene unfold, opened it without a word, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes full of something that might have been respect. Colin nodded to him. Thank you. Sir, the doorman's voice was soft. Do you need anything? I'm fine. Colin stepped out into the night air. But thank you for asking. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow felt louder than Mara's screaming. Inside the Bellacourt, silence reigned. Every eye was on Mara, and none of those eyes held admiration anymore. The looks ranged from shock to disgust to something that might have been pity, for her, not for the man she'd destroyed. The woman from the next table stood up, threw her napkin on her plate, and walked out without a word. Her husband followed. Then another couple. Then another. Within 2 minutes, half the restaurant's patrons had requested their checks. Mara stood frozen, her phone still recording, her hand still stinging from the slap. Bethany was crying silently beside her, her career probably flashing before her eyes. The maitre d' approached. his earlier professional smile completely gone. "Miss Wexler, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Excuse me?" "We have a policy against violence toward other patrons. I'm sure you understand." His voice was ice. "Your father's account will be closed effective immediately. You're no longer welcome at the Bellecourt." Mara's mouth opened, closed. "You can't." "I just did. Please leave. Now." The walk across that restaurant, past all those staring faces, past tables full of people filming her on their phones now, past the staff who looked at her like she was something that needed to be cleaned up, was the longest of Mara Wexler's life. She made it to her car before her hands started shaking. Bethany climbed in beside her, silent and pale. "That was," Mara started, then stopped. She looked at the video on her phone, all 15 minutes of it, crystal clear, every word recorded. "I'm posting this. Miss Wexler, I really don't think I'm posting it." Mara's fingers moved across her screen. "Everyone needs to see what happens when people like him try to reach above their station. Everyone needs to know that I don't tolerate—" She hit post before Bethany could stop her. The video went live to 3 million followers. Within minutes, it started spreading. Within an hour, it had 500,000 views. Within 2 hours, it was trending. The comments started rolling in, thousands of them, then tens of thousands. But as Mara scrolled through them, her satisfied smile began to fade. "Why is everyone attacking me?" she whispered, staring at her phone in disbelief. "He's the nobody. He's the one who showed up looking like that. Why are they calling me the villain?" Bethany didn't answer. She was too busy updating her resume in her head. Neither of them noticed the black sedan that had been parked across from the Bellecourt all evening. Neither of them saw the man in the expensive suit who'd filmed the entire interaction through the restaurant's window. Neither of them recognized the logo on his briefcase, a logo that belonged to the city's most powerful law firm. And neither of them knew that Colin Reddick had walked exactly 4 blocks before pulling out his own phone and making a single call. "It's done," he said quietly into the receiver. She took the bait, all of it. The voice on the other end was crisp and professional. "We have everything recorded, Mr. Reddick. Multiple angles. Audio is crystal clear. The assault is documented beyond any reasonable doubt." "Good." Colin looked down at his champagne-soaked shirt, touched the mark on his face that would definitely bruise. "Activate the clause." "Sir, are you absolutely certain? Once we do this, there's no going back. The acquisition—" "Activate it." Colin's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. They made their choice. Now they live with the consequences. "Yes, sir. The legal team will file within the hour. The press release will go out at midnight. By morning, every financial paper in the country will have the story." Colin hung up and stood for a moment on the sidewalk, letting the cool night air wash over him. His shirt was still wet, his face still stung. His pride, surprisingly, didn't hurt at all. He pulled up a photo on his phone, a young girl with dark hair and her father's kind eyes, bent over a notebook full of sketches. Circuit diagrams, she'd told him, for the quantum processor. She was 9 years old and designing the future. He texted her, "On my way home. Want to show me what you worked on today?" The response came back immediately. "Yes, Dad. I figured out the cooling problem. Wait till you see." Colin smiled for the first time that evening and started walking toward his car. A 10-year-old sedan that ran perfectly because he'd maintained every inch of it himself. Behind him, the Bellecourt blazed with light and music and the lives of people who thought they knew what power looked like. None of them had any idea what was coming. The drive home took Colin through parts of the city most people in the Bellecourt would never see. Neighborhoods where streetlights flickered instead of glowed, where corner stores had bars on the windows, where the American dream felt more like a myth than a promise. His sedan moved through these streets like it belonged there, because it did. This was where Colin Reddick had built his life, piece by careful piece, in the spaces between survival and ambition. The apartment building rose 6 stories, its brick facade marked by decades of weather and wear. The security door's lock had been broken for 3 months, the landlord promising to fix it next week in a perpetual loop of negligence. Colin climbed the stairs. The elevator had been out of service since July, his champagne-soaked shirt growing cold and stiff against his skin. Each step echoed in the concrete stairwell, a rhythm he'd walked so many times he could do it in his sleep. Fourth floor, apartment 4C. The door was painted a faded green that had probably been cheerful once, decades ago. He could hear music through it, something classical, violin concertos that Arya had discovered on YouTube and become obsessed with. His daughter had expensive tastes and a brilliant mind trapped in a life that could afford neither. Not for much longer. Colin unlocked the door and stepped into organized chaos. The apartment was small, 700 square feet that had to function as living room, dining room, workshop, and study all at once. But it was clean, deeply clean, the kind of clean that spoke of pride in the face of poverty. The furniture was old but maintained, the windows spotless, the floors swept daily. Books lined every available wall space stacked 2 rows deep on homemade shelves. Technical manuals sat beside children's novels, quantum physics textbooks next to sketch pads. And in the center of it all, at a table that wobbled on one short leg, sat Arya Reddick. She looked up as he entered, her face splitting into a smile that made everything, every insult, every moment of humiliation, every calculated second of that nightmare dinner, worth it. She was 9 years old with dark curly hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing an oversized t-shirt that had once been his and sweatpants with holes in the knees. Her hands were smudged with pencil lead, her notebook open to a page covered in diagrams that would have impressed most graduate students. Then her eyes focused on his shirt, and the smile evaporated. "Dad?" She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "What happened? Is that wine?" "Champagne, technically." Colin tried for a light tone and almost managed it. "Don't worry, kiddo. I'm fine." "You're not fine. Your face is—" She stepped closer, her young features creasing with concern. "Someone hit you." There was no point lying. Arya was too smart, too perceptive. She'd inherited her mother's ability to see through any facade he tried to construct. "The dinner didn't go well." "Didn't go well?" Her voice rose, cracking with emotion. "Dad, someone assaulted you. We need to call the police. We need to—" "Arya." He placed his hands gently on her shoulders. "Listen to me. Everything is okay. Better than okay, actually. Everything is going exactly according to plan." She searched his face, her brilliant mind clearly trying to puzzle through how a champagne-soaked shirt and a bruised cheek could possibly be part of any plan. "I don't understand." "I know, and I need you to trust me for just a little bit longer. Can you do that?" Arya bit her lip, a gesture so achingly similar to her mother's that Colin's chest tightened, and nodded slowly. "Is this about the thing? The secret thing you've been working on?" "Yes." "The thing you won't tell me about until it's finished?" "That's the one." "And someone hitting you is part of the plan for the secret thing?" Colin smiled despite everything. "Not the most pleasant part, I'll admit. But yes, a necessary part." Arya studied him for another long moment, then seemed to accept this with the same preternatural calm she'd shown since her mother died. She'd grown up too fast, this daughter of his. Had to. Life didn't offer children in their neighborhood the luxury of prolonged innocence. "Okay, but you're changing that shirt. It smells like a liquor store." "Deal. But first, show me what you've been working on. You said something about the cooling problem?" Her face transformed instantly, concern replaced by pure excitement. She grabbed his hand, not caring about the champagne, and pulled him toward the table. "Dad, it's so cool. I mean, literally cool. That's the whole point. So you know how we talked about how quantum processors generate massive amounts of heat when they process information?" "I remember." Colin sat down carefully, the champagne-stiff fabric of his shirt pulling uncomfortably. This was their ritual, had been for the past 2 years. Every night, Arya would show him her sketches, her ideas, her solutions to problems that billion-dollar research teams were struggling to solve. And every night, Colin would listen, really listen, because somewhere in his 9-year-old daughter's wild imagination were kernels of genuine innovation. Well, most systems use liquid nitrogen cooling, right? But that's expensive and complicated and requires all this infrastructure. Arya flipped her notebook to a page filled with intricate diagrams. But what if we didn't try to cool the processor from outside? What if we used the quantum properties themselves to regulate temperature? Colin leaned forward, his disastrous evening forgotten. Explain. For the next hour, Arya walked him through her concept, a theoretical framework for using quantum entanglement to distribute heat across a processor array, effectively making the cooling process self-regulating. It was wild. It was impossible. It was also, Colin realized as she talked, potentially revolutionary. The math is really hard, Arya admitted, chewing on her pencil. I can't figure out the entanglement ratios. I tried to look it up online, but most of the papers are locked behind paywalls. She said this matter-of-factly, without resentment, just stating a fact of their life. Information cost money they didn't have. I'll help you with the math this weekend, Colin promised. But Arya, this concept, do you understand how brilliant this is? She shrugged, embarrassed and pleased. It's probably been thought of before. Maybe, but you thought of it at 9 years old, in an apartment in the Bronx without access to a proper lab or research databases. He touched her notebook gently, reverently. Your mom would be so proud of you. Arya's expression softened. You think so? I know so. She used to say you were going to change the world someday. Colin's throat tightened. She was right. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the ghost of Sarah Reddick hovering warmly between them. She'd been gone 3 years, but her presence filled the apartment still. In the books she'd bought for Arya, in the photos on every wall, in the strength she'd instilled in both of them during those final terrible months. Dad? Arya's voice was small. Will we always live like this? The question hung in the air like smoke. Colin looked around their tiny apartment, seeing it through his daughter's eyes. The wobbling table, the secondhand furniture, the single bedroom that Arya used while he slept on a pull-out couch in the living room, the refrigerator that hummed too loud because the compressor was dying, but replacing it would cost money they needed for other things. The windows that didn't quite seal, letting in cold air in winter and hot air in summer. The neighbors whose arguments came through walls too thin to muffle much of anything. No, he said finally, we won't always live like this. But you said that before when Mom was sick. You said things would get better. They will. I promise you, Arya, they will. Very soon now. She wanted to believe him. He could see it in her eyes, the war between hope and the hard lessons poverty had already taught her. How soon? Before Colin could answer, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and felt satisfaction bloom cold and certain in his chest. A message from Marcus Webb, senior partner at Webb, Richardson and Associates. Clause activated. Papers filed. Press release drafted and scheduled. This is going to be spectacular. Another buzz. This one from Jennifer Park, his patent attorney. Vexler legal team just realized what hit them. 4 missed calls in the last 10 minutes, letting them all go to voicemail as instructed. This is the most fun I've had in years. A third buzz. Thomas Chen, his chief technology officer. Boss, the video is everywhere. 3 million views and climbing. Comment section is a war zone. How are you holding up? Colin typed back quickly. I'm fine. Everything's proceeding as planned. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. sharp. Make sure everyone's there. He looked up to find Arya watching him with those 2 old eyes. Something's happening. Yes. Something big. Very big. Is it the secret thing? Colin stood up, wincing as the stiff shirt pulled. I need to change, and then I need to make a few calls. But Arya, I want you to remember tonight. Remember this apartment, this table, this moment, because everything is about to change. Good change or bad change? That depends on your perspective. He headed toward the bedroom, then paused in the doorway. For us? Very, very good. For some other people? Not so much. He changed quickly, the champagne-soaked shirt going into a plastic bag that he sealed carefully. Evidence, though he already had plenty. The handprint on his face had bloomed into a full bruise, purple and angry against his skin. He took a photo of it with his phone, sent it to Marcus Webb with a simple caption. Documentation. Webb's response came back immediately. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. They handed us everything. Colin pulled on a clean t-shirt and jeans, then returned to the living room where Arya had gone back to her notebooks, though he could tell her mind wasn't fully on the diagrams anymore. She kept glancing at him, questions piling up behind her eyes. His phone rang. Unknown number, but Colin recognized the area code. He answered. Mr. Reddick? A woman's voice, crisp and professional with an edge of barely controlled panic. This is Amanda Rothschild, Senior Counsel for Vexler Industries. I apologize for calling so late, but we need to speak urgently about— No, we don't. Colin kept his voice pleasant. We have nothing to discuss. Mr. Reddick, please. There's been a misunderstanding. Tonight's incident with Miss Vexler was recorded from multiple angles and is currently going viral online. Yes, I'm aware. A pause. You're, aware? I'm very aware, Ms. Rothschild, of the video, of the 3 million people who've seen it, of the trending hashtags, of everything. Colin sat down at the table across from Arya, who was now openly listening. What I'm not aware of is why you're calling me. Because we need to discuss the acquisition. There are certain contractual obligations that we're voided the moment your client's daughter physically assaulted me in a public place. Section 47, subsection 12 of the merger agreement, the dignity clause. The silence on the other end was deafening. You knew about that clause. Ms. Rothschild, I wrote that clause, personally. I insisted it be included. Your firm agreed to it 6 months ago. Colin's voice remained calm, almost friendly. Did no one on your team actually read the entire contract? Mr. Reddick, that clause was buried in supplementary documentation. It was legally binding, just like every other word in that 1,000-page document that your firm assured Mr. Vexler was standard boilerplate. Colin glanced at Arya, who was watching him with wide eyes. Tell me, did it seem standard when you agreed that any act of violence, harassment, or severe public humiliation directed at the founder by any member of the acquiring family would result in immediate contract nullification with full penalty clauses? That was theoretical. No one actually thought that a Vexler would publicly humiliate someone? Really? Because I did my research, Ms. Rothschild. Mara Vexler has a history of incidents, screaming at staff, throwing things, making scenes. It's all documented. I was just the first person positioned to actually do something about it. You set her up. The accusation came out strangled. I showed up to a dinner I was invited to. I was polite. I was quiet. I didn't fight back. I didn't insult anyone. I simply existed while being publicly berated, humiliated, assaulted, and filmed. Colin's voice hardened. Your client's daughter did the rest entirely on her own. Mr. Reddick, please be reasonable. We can work this out. The acquisition is worth $120 million. You can't just walk away from, I can, I am. And by tomorrow morning, every financial publication in the world will know exactly why. Colin stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the street below. The press release goes out at midnight. I suggest you prepare Mr. Vexler. The press release? What press release? The one explaining how Vexler Industries attempted to acquire Reddick Quantum Systems through deceptive business practices. How they undervalued our technology by 40%. How they planned to gut our research division and offshore our manufacturing. How they thought they could buy out a nobody in a failing repair shop and steal years of revolutionary work. Colin's reflection in the window was calm, cold. All of which is documented in emails your team thought were secure. That information is privileged. You can't— It's public interest, and my lawyers assure me it's perfectly legal. Colin turned back to the apartment, to Arya, who was gripping her pencil so hard her knuckles had gone white. Here's what's going to happen, Ms. Rothschild. At midnight, the world learns the truth. By morning, Vexler Industries stock will be in freefall. By next week, the board will be calling for Robert Vexler's resignation. And by next month, the technology he thought he'd stolen will be partnered with a company that actually values innovation over exploitation. You're destroying us over a slap? Her voice rose, disbelief mixing with rage. Over one stupid mistake by a spoiled girl who didn't know who you were? No. Colin's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm protecting my daughter's future from people who would have taken everything we built and left us with nothing. The slap just gave me the legal justification. He hung up. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the dying refrigerator and the distant sound of sirens on the street below. Dad? Arya's voice was shaky. What just happened? Colin returned to the table and sat down heavily. For the first time that night, he looked tired. Remember how I told you that sometimes you have to be smarter than you are strong? Yes. And remember how I said that people with power often forget that intelligence is its own kind of power? Yes. Tonight was proof of that. Colin reached across the table and took her hand. Arya, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully, okay? She nodded, her eyes huge. I don't just own a repair shop. I mean, I do. Reddick Repair is real, and we do good work there. But I also own something else. Something I've been building for the past 5 years, since before your mom got sick. Something that's going to change everything. Like a business? Like a technology company. Reddick Quantum Systems. He watched her face as she processed this. We develop quantum computing processors, the kind that could revolutionize everything from medicine to climate modeling to artificial intelligence, the kind that the biggest tech companies in the world would pay billions for. Arya's mouth opened, closed. Billions? Eventually, yes, but right now, we're still small. Just me and a team of 12 brilliant engineers working in a lab across town. We have 6 patents, 3 pending, and technology that's 3 years ahead of our nearest competitor. Colin squeezed her hand, and 6 months ago, a company called Vexler Industries approached us about acquiring our technology. The same Vexler from tonight? The same. Robert Vexler wanted to buy us out, offered $120 million, which sounds like a lot. It is a lot. Not for what we've built, not for what our technology is actually worth. I had it independently valued. Conservative estimates put it at $300 million. Optimistic estimates? $500 million. Colin smiled at her shocked expression. Vexler knew this. His people are smart enough to recognize what we have, but they also thought I was desperate enough to take whatever they offered. A single dad in a struggling neighborhood trying to keep his kid fed and housed? Easy target. But you're not desperate. No, I'm patient. There's a difference. Colin leaned back, his mind returning to the months of careful planning. I knew Vexler's reputation. I knew how his company operates. Buy small innovators cheap, strip them for parts, discard the rest. I knew his daughter's reputation too, so I built in protections. The dignity clause. And about 24 others, each one carefully worded, each one designed to give me an exit if I needed it. I let them think I was naive. Let them think I didn't understand their contract. Let them bury clauses in supplementary documents, thinking I'd never read them all. His smile turned sharp. I read every word, every comma, every footnote, and then I made sure every escape route was in place before I signed anything. But tonight was the trigger. I needed documentation that someone in the Vexler family acted with malice toward me. Needed it to be public, undeniable, recorded. So when Robert Vexler suggested a blind date with his daughter, supposedly to build relationships before the acquisition, I saw an opportunity. Arya's eyes went wide. You knew she would do that? I suspected strongly. Did research on her. Found 17 documented incidents of her abusing service staff, making scenes in public, humiliating people she thought were beneath her. So I dressed down, way down. Made myself look like exactly the kind of target she couldn't resist. Colin touched his bruised cheek. I didn't know she'd go this far. Hoped she wouldn't, honestly. But I was prepared for it if she did. You let her hurt you. I let her reveal who she really is. There's a difference. Colin's expression softened. Arya, I need you to understand something. What I did tonight, setting that situation up, staying quiet while she humiliated me, taking that hit, I did it for us. For you. Because people like the Vexlers, they don't just take your money, they take your future. They take your dreams. They take everything you've built, and they slap their name on it and they act like you never existed. Like Mom's research. The words hit like a punch. Colin's throat tightened. Yes, like Mom's research. Sarah Reddick had been a biochemist, brilliant and driven, working for a pharmaceutical company when she'd developed a promising cancer treatment protocol. The company had promised her credit, promised her a share of the profits, promised everything. Then when her own cancer diagnosis came, they'd pushed her out on medical leave and published her research under someone else's name. By the time she'd been healthy enough to fight back, they'd buried her under NDAs and legal threats. She died never seeing her work properly attributed. Colin had sworn, standing beside her hospital bed in those final days, that he would never let someone do that to his work, to their daughter's future. So tonight, he continued, his voice rough with emotion, when that spoiled, cruel woman hit me and called me nothing, I let her. Because I knew every second was being recorded. I knew every word would be evidence. I knew that her inability to see beyond her own privilege would be exactly what destroyed her family's chance to take what we've built. Arya was quiet for a long moment, processing. When does everyone else find out? Colin checked his phone. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes. And then what happens? Then the world shifts. Colin pulled up his email, showing Arya the draft press release. She leaned forward, reading quickly, her expression changing from shock to something harder to define. The headline read, Reddick Quantum Systems terminates acquisition agreement, following assault on founder, full legal action pending against Vexler Industries. By morning, Colin explained, every major financial news outlet will have this story. By noon, Vexler's stock will have dropped at least 20%. By end of business tomorrow, investors will be calling for blood. Robert Vexler built his empire on aggressive acquisitions and hostile takeovers, but he built it on sand. His company is over-leveraged, dependent on this acquisition to meet quarterly targets. Without our technology, they miss projections, and their credit rating drops. Credit rating drops, and everything falls apart. Like dominoes. Colin closed the email. And we walk away clean, with all our patents, all our technology, all our future intact. But we walk away broke. Arya gestured around the apartment. I mean, we don't have the $120 million anymore. We never had it. It was a trap dressed as an opportunity. Colin's phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus Webb. 5 minutes. You ready for this? He typed back. Born ready. To Arya, he said, we don't need Vexler's money. We never did. What we need is the freedom to build what we're building without someone trying to steal it. And as of 13 minutes from now, we'll have that freedom back. And after the press release and the stock crash and all of it? Colin smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. Then we field offers from companies who actually respect what we do. Companies who will pay what our technology is actually worth. Companies who... His phone rang. Different number, but the area code made his eyebrows rise. Silicon Valley. Mr. Reddick? A man's voice, older, with the calm confidence of someone who'd built empires and knew exactly what they were doing. This is Richard Torres. We haven't met, but I've been following your work for some time. I'm the CEO of Solvane Dynamics. I know who you are, Mr. Torres. Colin's heart rate picked up despite his calm tone. Solvane Dynamics was one of the most respected tech companies in the world, worth over $50 billion, known for partnering with innovators rather than consuming them. Good. Then you know I don't make calls like this lightly. Torres paused. I'm looking at a video right now. You, in a restaurant, being publicly humiliated and assaulted by Mara Vexler. I'm also looking at some very interesting information about a press release scheduled to drop in. Papers rustled. 11 minutes. A press release that's going to blow up Robert Vexler's acquisition and tank his stock. I can neither confirm nor deny. Don't bullshit me, son. I've been in this game for 40 years. I know a calculated move when I see one. Torres chuckled, and it sounded genuine. You let her bury herself while cameras rolled. That took guts and smarts and the kind of strategic thinking I pay premium prices for. Colin's mouth went dry. Why are you calling, Mr. Torres? Because in 11 minutes, you're going to be the most talked about tech founder in America. Every company that was too blind to see your potential is going to suddenly want a piece of you. You're going to have offers flying at you from every direction, most of them garbage dressed up pretty. Torres's voice sharpened. I want to make you an offer before that feeding frenzy starts. A real offer. The kind that actually respects what you've built. I'm listening. Partnership. Not acquisition. Solvane provides funding, manufacturing infrastructure, market access, and legal protection. You maintain full control of your IP, your research direction, your team. We split profits 60-40. Which way? 60 for you. I'm not interested in stealing your work, Mr. Reddick. I'm interested in helping you build something that actually changes the world. Torres paused. I lost someone to cancer 5 years ago. My wife. I've been watching your research on quantum computing applications for medical modeling. If your technology can help even one person avoid what she went through. The line went quiet for a moment. Colin closed his eyes, seeing Sarah in her hospital bed, weak and determined, making him promise to keep building, keep creating, keep pushing forward. Mr. Torres, I appreciate the call, but I need to think about it. I know, but here's the thing. My offer comes with a clock. I'll hold this deal open for 24 hours. After that, you're in the shark tank alone, and some of those sharks are meaner than me. Torres's voice softened. You did a brave thing tonight, letting yourself be hurt to protect something you believe in. That tells me you're the kind of person I want to work with. So think about it, but don't think too long. The call ended. Colin stared at his phone, his mind racing. Solvane Dynamics, a real partnership, 60% control. Full IP protection. Dad? Arya's voice was small. Was that real? I think so. He wants to work with us? He wants to work with me. But yes. Colin looked at his daughter, seeing Sarah in every feature, seeing the future in her brilliant eyes. Arya, I need to tell you something else. Something I should have told you a long time ago. What? The work I've been doing? The quantum processors? They're not just for computers, they're medical applications, treatment planning, drug interaction modeling, early detection systems for diseases like cancer. His voice cracked. Everything I built trying to make sure no other kid has to watch their mom die the way you did. The way we did. Tears filled Arya's eyes. Mom would have loved that. She did love it. It was her idea, actually. During one of her last good days, she said, Colin, you're brilliant with machines. What if you use that to help fix people? He wiped his own eyes roughly. So I did. Been doing it ever since. And Vexler wanted to buy it, strip it for generic computing applications, and abandon the medical research because it's not profitable enough yet. That's evil. That's business. Their version of it, anyway. Colin checked his phone. 11:58. But not anymore. In 2 minutes, their version of business crashes into reality, and we get to build something better. He opened his email, finger hovering over the send button on the press release. Marcus Webb and his entire legal team were copied, ready to handle the fallout. Jennifer Park had the patent protections locked down tight. Thomas Chen had the technical documentation ready for public release. Everything was in place. This is really happening, Arya whispered. This is really happening. Are you scared? Terrified. But you're doing it anyway? Colin looked at her, this brave, brilliant daughter who'd faced poverty and loss and uncertainty with more grace than most adults could manage. Your mom used to say that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway. 11:59. His phone buzzed. Marcus Webb. It's time. Colin took a deep breath and pressed send. The press release went out to 250 media contacts simultaneously. Financial news wires, tech publications, major newspapers, television networks. The subject line was simple and devastating. Vexler Industries acquisition collapses following physical assault on tech founder. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then Colin's phone exploded. Messages flooded in, from reporters, from competitors, from investors, from colleagues he hadn't spoken to in years. His email alert sound became a continuous chime. His phone started ringing with calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Arya watched with wide eyes as her father's phone became a weapon of mass disruption. Each notification, another explosion in the carefully constructed world of Vexler Industries. Mr. Reddick, a text from Bloomberg News. Can we get a statement? Colin, need comment on Vexler situation. TechCrunch. Urgent. Interview request assault and contract termination. Wall Street Journal. And then, cutting through the chaos, A single text from an unknown number. You just declared war on one of the most powerful families in this city. Hope you know what you're doing. A friend at Vexler. Cullen showed it to Arya. Someone inside their organization is already jumping ship. Is that good? That's very good. Means the smart ones see which way the wind is blowing. Another call. This one he recognized. Thomas Chen calling from the lab. Boss, you need to turn on the news, any channel. It's everywhere. Cullen grabbed the remote and turned on the small TV mounted on the wall. A 20-year-old flat screen he'd repaired himself when someone threw it away. He flipped to a financial news channel. The headline banner scrolling across the bottom read, Breaking. Vexler Industries acquisition falls apart after viral video shows air assaulting tech founder. The anchor, a polished woman in her 40s, looked directly into the camera. We're following breaking news tonight in what may be one of the most dramatic corporate collapses we've seen this year. Vexler Industries, the industrial holdings company valued at just over $300 million, has just seen their planned acquisition of quantum computing startup Reddick Quantum Systems completely disintegrate. The screen split, showing Cullen's professional headshot on one side and Mara Vexler's Instagram profile picture on the other. Earlier tonight, the anchor continued, video emerged of Mara Vexler, daughter of Vexler Industries CEO Robert Vexler, publicly humiliating and physically assaulting Cullen Reddick, the founder of Reddick Quantum Systems, during what was apparently an arranged meeting between the two families. The video, which has now been viewed over 5 million times, shows Miss Vexler throwing champagne at Mr. Reddick and then slapping him in front of dozens of witnesses at the exclusive Bellacourt restaurant. The screen filled with clips from Mara's own Instagram video, her mocking voice, the champagne throw, the slap itself. The sound of it cracked through the apartment like a gunshot. Arya flinched. Cullen reached over and took her hand. What makes this story particularly significant, the anchor went on, is that this assault apparently triggered a little-known clause in the acquisition contract, a clause that voids the entire deal if any member of the acquiring family engages in violence or harassment against the founder. In a press release issued just moments ago, Reddick Quantum Systems announced they are terminating the acquisition agreement and pursuing legal action against Vexler Industries for attempting to undervalue their technology. The screen switched to show the press release, text scrolling as the anchor read key passages aloud. This is devastating for Vexler Industries. The acquisition was critical to their quarterly projections and their overall growth strategy. Without it, analysts are already predicting significant stock losses when markets open tomorrow morning. We're hearing estimates of a 20 to 30% drop in the first hour of trading alone. 30%, Arya breathed. That's $90 million in market value, Cullen finished quietly. Gone, just like that. The anchor wasn't finished. We've reached out to both parties for comment. Reddick Quantum Systems referred us to their legal team. Vexler Industries has not responded to multiple requests. But we have confirmed that emergency meetings are being held at Vexler headquarters right now, and there are reports that several board members are already calling for CEO Robert Vexler's resignation. The screen switched again, this time showing exterior footage of Vexler Industries headquarters, a gleaming tower in downtown that looked nothing like the neighborhood where Cullen lived. Even at midnight, lights were blazing in the top-floor offices. Shadows moved behind windows. The vultures were already circling. Cullen's phone rang again. Marcus Webb. Are you watching this? The lawyer sounded gleeful, almost giddy. I'm watching. Cullen, this is beautiful. Perfect. They're imploding in real time. Papers rustled in the background. I've already had 3 calls from reporters, 2 from competing firms asking if we're open to offers, and 1 from Vexler's legal team threatening to sue us for defamation. They're threatening us? Oh yes. Apparently documenting their own daughter assaulting you is somehow defamation. I told them to pound sand. Webb laughed. Best night of my career, hands down. How are you holding up? I'm okay, tired, but okay. Well, rest up. Tomorrow's going to be insane. Every tech publication in the world is going to want to talk to you. Every competitor of Vexler's is going to smell blood. And every investor who passed on us before is going to suddenly discover their deep passion for quantum computing. Webb paused. You ready for that? Cullen looked around the tiny apartment, at the wobbling table, the dying refrigerator, the daughter who deserved so much more than this. I'm ready. Good. Because, Colin, this isn't just about destroying Vexler. This is about building something real, something that matters. And after tonight, everyone knows your name. Everyone knows what you're capable of. Use it wisely. They hung up. The TV had moved on to expert analysis, a panel of people in expensive suits dissecting every angle of the story. One of them, a silver-haired man identified as a corporate ethics consultant, was speaking directly to camera. What we're seeing here is a cautionary tale about privilege and power. Mara Vexler clearly believed she was untouchable. She filmed herself committing assault, posted it publicly, and apparently never considered there might be consequences. That level of arrogance, that assumption that rules don't apply to you simply because of your last name, that's exactly the kind of thinking that destroys companies and families. Another panelist, a woman in a sharp blazer, nodded emphatically. And let's talk about Colin Reddick for a moment. This man sat there and took abuse that would have made most people walk out or fight back. He stayed calm. He documented everything. He protected himself legally while never stooping to her level. That's the kind of strategic thinking that builds successful companies. Some are saying he set her up, a third panelist interjected. And so what if he did? The woman shot back. He didn't make her throw champagne, didn't make her slap him, didn't make her post it online. All he did was give her enough rope to hang herself with. That's not manipulation, that's consequence. Arya squeezed Colin's hand. They're talking about you like you're famous. Right now I kind of am. 15 minutes of fame. Colin smiled. Let's see if we can turn it into something longer. His phone buzzed. Another text from Richard Torres. Saw the news. Offer still stands. 24 hours. Think carefully about who you want in your corner when the dust settles. Colin stared at the message for a long time, then typed back. Can we meet tomorrow? Say 2 p.m.? I'd like to see your facilities, meet your team, understand exactly what partnership means to Solvane. The response came back almost instantly. I'll send a car. And Colin, welcome to the big leagues. Try not to get eaten alive. What's happening? Arya asked. A chance, maybe. A real one. Colin set his phone down and pulled his daughter into a hug. Arya, everything's going to be different now. The apartment, the school, the whole life we've been living. It's all going to change. She pulled back to look at him, her expression serious beyond her years. Is that scary? It's terrifying. But we're doing it anyway? Colin smiled, hearing Sarah's words echo through both of them. We're doing it anyway. They sat together as the news cycle churned on, as Mara Vexler's video spread across social media like wildfire, as hashtags like #VexlerAssault and Dignity Clause started trending worldwide. Colin's phone never stopped buzzing. Messages poured in from people he hadn't heard from in years, colleagues from graduate school, fellow engineers, even a few investors who'd passed on early funding rounds and were now clearly regretting it. But through it all, Colin kept one eye on the clock, because at 6 a.m., he had an emergency board meeting. At 2 p.m., he had a meeting with Solvane Dynamics that could redefine everything. And at 9 a.m., when the stock market opened, the real carnage would begin. Somewhere across the city, in a tower full of desperate lawyers and panicking executives, Robert Vexler was probably realizing that the quiet man in the repair shop had never been what he seemed, that the easy target had been a trap, that underestimating someone based on their clothes and neighborhood was the kind of mistake that ended empires. Dad? Arya's voice was sleepy now, the adrenaline fading. Can I ask you something? Anything. When you were sitting there letting her hurt you, were you thinking about us? About me? Colin pulled her closer. Every second, every word she said, every insult, every moment, I thought about you, about giving you the future you deserve, about making sure no one could take away what we're building. He kissed the top of her head. Everything I do for you. I know, she yawned. Mom would be proud of you too. Not just me, you. The words hit harder than Mara's slap ever could. Colin blinked back tears and nodded, not trusting his voice. On TV, the coverage continued. Analysts predicted devastating losses for Vexler Industries. Reporters camped outside the Bella Court, interviewing witnesses. Social media exploded with hot takes and think pieces and amateur legal analysis. The story had everything: wealth, betrayal, violence, vindication. It was the kind of narrative that captured imagination and refused to let go. And at the center of it all, sitting in a cramped apartment that would soon be a memory, Colin Reddick held his daughter and watched his carefully constructed plan unfold exactly as designed. The slap that was meant to humiliate him had instead launched a revolution. The woman who called him nothing had inadvertently proven he was everything. And the empire that thought it could consume him was about to learn what happened when you underestimated the quiet ones. Real power, as Colin had always known, didn't announce itself. It simply waited for the right moment to be revealed. That moment was now. Colin managed 3 hours of sleep before his alarm shattered the pre-dawn quiet at 5 a.m. His body ached from tension he'd been holding since the restaurant, and the bruise on his face had deepened overnight into a spectacular purple-black badge that no amount of ice could diminish. Good. Let them see it. Let every camera and every witness at today's event see exactly what Mara Vexler's contempt looked like in flesh and bone. Aria was still asleep in the bedroom, her notebook open beside her pillow, pencil marks smudged across one cheek where she'd fallen asleep mid-equation. Colin pulled the blanket up gently and left a note on her nightstand. Emergency meeting. Mrs. Chen will check on you at 8. Love you more than quantum physics. Dad. The streets were empty as he drove across town, the city still mostly sleeping, unaware that its social and financial landscape was about to shift dramatically. His phone sat in the cup holder, silent for the first time in hours. He'd turned off notifications around 2 a.m. when the message count hit 4 digits and his battery dropped to 15%. Now driving through dawn-lit streets, he allowed himself to feel the weight of what he'd set in motion. The lab occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse in an industrial area where rent was cheap and questions were few. Nothing about the exterior suggested the revolutionary work happening inside. Just another anonymous building with dirty windows and a rusting fire escape. Exactly how Colin wanted it. The best innovations happened in places no one thought to look. He parked in the small lot behind the building and used his keycard to access the service entrance. The stairwell smelled like oil and old concrete, his footsteps echoing as he climbed. At the 3rd floor door, another card swipe, then a fingerprint scanner that Chen had installed last year after their 3rd patent filing made them a potential target for industrial espionage. The door opened onto controlled chaos. Reddick Quantum Systems headquarters looked like a fever dream of technology and ambition. Workbenches covered every available surface, laden with circuit boards, oscilloscopes, quantum processors in various stages of assembly. Whiteboards covered the walls, filled with equations that would make most physicists weep. Computer screens glowed with simulations running 24/7. The air hummed with electricity and possibility and the faint ozone smell of high-energy electronics. And crowded around the main conference table, a sheet of plywood balanced on sawhorses because proper furniture was for companies with venture capital, stood his entire team. Thomas Chen, CTO, and the first person Colin had hired, looked like he hadn't slept. His usually neat hair stood in wild directions, his glasses were smudged, and coffee stains marked his MIT hoodie like battle scars. But his eyes were bright with something between excitement and terror. Jennifer Park, their patent attorney, had apparently come straight from her real office. She still wore yesterday's suit, though she'd lost the jacket somewhere and rolled her sleeves to her elbows. Her laptop was open, surrounded by legal documents that probably cost more than Colin's car. The rest of the team, 9 engineers and researchers who'd believed in Colin's vision enough to work for equity and hope instead of Silicon Valley salaries, looked exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. Maria Rodriguez, their lead hardware engineer, was stress-eating donuts. James Patterson, quantum theory specialist, was literally vibrating with nervous energy. Sarah Kim, named after Colin's late wife, which had felt like a sign when she'd applied, couldn't stop grinning despite the bags under her eyes. They all turned as Colin entered, and the room went silent. "So," Chen said finally. "That happened." "That happened," Colin agreed. "Boss, your face," Maria started. "Is fine. Looks worse than it feels." Colin set his bag down and moved to the head of the makeshift table. "I assume everyone's seen the news?" "Seen it?" Patterson laughed, high and slightly hysterical. "We've been watching it since midnight. The whole internet's gone insane. You're trending on Twitter. There are memes. Someone made a TikTok that's got like 8 million views where they auto-tuned Mara Vexler screaming, "You're nothing," into a techno song. There's also a GoFundMe someone started to help the humble repairman, Sarah added. It's raised $40,000 in 6 hours. People think you're actually broke. Colin felt something twist in his chest. The strange discomfort of strangers' pity mixed with their genuine desire to help. We'll donate it. Cancer research in my wife's name. Jennifer, can you handle that? Park nodded, already typing. On it. What about the Vexlers? Colin asked. Any response from them yet? Chen pulled up a laptop and spun it around. Oh, they've responded. Sort of. The screen showed a brief statement from Vexler Industries' PR team, clearly written by lawyers and scrubbed of anything resembling personality. Vexler Industries regrets the unfortunate incident involving Miss Mara Vexler and Mr. Colin Reddick. This was a private matter between two individuals and does not reflect the values or business practices of our organization. We are reviewing the situation and will take appropriate action. Appropriate action? Maria snorted. That's code for we're throwing Mara under the bus to save ourselves. She threw herself under the bus, Patterson pointed out. Posted the video herself. All they're doing is not pulling her back out. Jennifer looked up from her laptop, her expression grim. It's worse than that. I've been monitoring their legal communications. They're not well hidden if you know where to look. They're preparing to argue that Mara acted as a private citizen, not as a representative of the company. They want to claim the dignity clause doesn't apply because she wasn't acting in an official capacity. Colin had expected this. Can they make that stick? Not a chance. The dinner was arranged by Robert Vexler himself as part of the acquisition negotiation process. He sent the invitation from his company email, set it up as a business meeting. There's a paper trail a mile long proving this was company business. Jennifer's smile was sharp as broken glass. They're going to try anyway because what else can they do? But they'll lose. What's the stock looking like? Colin asked. Chen pulled up a financial tracking site. Pre-market trading started an hour ago. Vexler Industries is down 28% already. When the bell rings at 9:30, he made an explosion gesture with his hands. Analysts are predicting a 40% drop by end of day. Maybe more if any of their other deals start falling apart. Their credit line just got pulled, Park added, reading from her phone. Berkshire Financial issued a statement 10 minutes ago citing reputational concerns and operational instability. That's going to trigger clauses in about 6 other agreements. This isn't just bad for them. This is catastrophic. The room went quiet, everyone processing the magnitude of what was unfolding. Somewhere across the city, in that gleaming tower, Robert Vexler was watching his empire crumble. His daughter's moment of cruelty had become a wrecking ball, and there was no way to stop the swing. Colin felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a cold, clear sense of justice being served. All right. He straightened, pulling the team's attention back to him. Here's where we are. The acquisition is dead. Vexler Industries is collapsing. And as of about 6 hours ago, every tech company in the world knows our name and wants to know what we're working on. We've had 12 inquiries already, Chen confirmed. Microsoft, Google, Apple, all the big ones, plus about 40 smaller firms. Everyone wants to talk. We're not talking to them, not yet. Colin pulled out his phone and showed them the message from Richard Torres. We're talking to Solvane Dynamics first. 2 p.m. today. I'm meeting with their CEO. The reaction was immediate. Sarah gasped. Maria dropped her donut. Patterson actually stumbled backward into a workbench. Solvane, Chen's voice cracked. As in Solvane Dynamics? As in one of the most respected tech companies on the planet? They called last night, offered a partnership, not an acquisition. 60% control stays with us. Full IP protection. Access to their manufacturing and distribution. Jennifer leaned forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in. What's the catch? Don't know yet. That's why I'm meeting with them. Colin looked around at his team, these brilliant people who'd bet their careers on his vision. But here's what I need from all of you today. First, we lock down everything. All our research, all our data, all our prototypes. I want triple backups on secure servers. I want patent protections reinforced. I want every piece of intellectual property we own documented and protected so thoroughly that no one can even think about stealing it." "Already done," Park said. "Finished at 3 a.m. Everything's encrypted, backed up, and legally bulletproof. Second, I need a presentation ready. Full technical breakdown of what we've built, where we're going, what we need to get there. Something I can show Torres that proves we're not just hype and hope." "I can have that ready by noon," Chen said immediately. "Full specs, demonstration videos, projected applications, the works." "Third," Colin hesitated, knowing this would be the hardest part, "I need you all to prepare for the possibility that this doesn't work out, that Solvane passes or their terms aren't acceptable, or something falls through. If that happens, we're going to be in a very public spotlight with no financial backing, and every competitor in the world trying to poach our people and our work." The room shifted uncomfortably. "You're saying we might still fail," Maria said quietly. "I'm saying we're at a crossroads. What happens in the next 24 hours will determine whether we become the next big thing or just another cautionary tale." Colin met each person's eyes in turn. "So I need to know, all of you, are you in? Really in? Because if you're not, now's the time to say so. No judgment. This is about to get intense." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Patterson laughed, that same slightly hysterical sound from earlier. "Boss, I left a 6-figure job at IBM to work in a warehouse for equity that might never be worth anything. I'm in." "I've been in. You couldn't pay me enough to leave now." "I turned down Google twice to stay here," Sarah added. "I want to see where this goes." One by one, they all confirmed. Maria, Chen, Jennifer, every engineer and researcher in the room. They were in, all in, riding this wave wherever it led. Colin felt his throat tighten. "Okay then, let's change the world." They scattered to their workstations, the lab exploding into focused activity. Chen pulled up the presentation framework. Park dove back into legal documents. Maria started running diagnostics on their latest prototype. The energy in the room was electric, almost manic, the feeling of being on the edge of something enormous. Colin's phone buzzed. Marcus Webb. "Morning. How's the most famous tech founder in America feeling?" He typed back. "Tired. Nervous. Ready. Good." Press is camped outside Vexler headquarters. Robert Vexler still hasn't made a public statement. Rumors are the board's meeting in emergency session to discuss his removal. This is going better than we could have hoped. Another message, this one from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Reddick, this is Amanda Castellanos with CBS News. We'd love to have you on for an interview this morning, 8 a.m. slot. Can we send a car?" Colin stared at the message. National news. His face, his story, broadcast to millions of people. The temptation was real, every tech founder's dream, that kind of exposure. But he wasn't ready. Not yet. Going on television now, before the Solvane meeting, before he knew which direction this was heading, that would be showing his hand too early. He declined politely, citing schedule conflicts. 6 more interview requests came in over the next hour. He declined them all. At 7:30, his phone rang with a call that made his blood run cold. The number had a local area code, but something about it felt wrong. He answered cautiously. "Colin Reddick?" A woman's voice, older, refined, with the kind of accent that suggested private schools and country clubs. "Speaking." "My name is Margaret Vexler, Robert's wife, Mara's mother." Colin straightened, his entire body tensing. Around the lab, work continued, but he moved toward the window away from the noise. "Mrs. Vexler, I'm surprised to hear from you." "I imagine you are." She sighed, and it sounded genuinely weary. "Mr. Reddick, I'm calling to apologize for my daughter's behavior, for my husband's role in creating the situation, for all of it." Colin said nothing, waiting. "I watched the video," Margaret continued, "all 15 minutes of it, and I was mortified, humiliated. Not for Mara, for myself. Because I realized that I raised that girl. I taught her through my actions and inactions that people could be treated as less than based on their income or appearance. I failed her as a mother, and in doing so she failed you as a human being." "Mrs. Vexler, please let me finish. I know what my husband was doing. I know he undervalued your company. I know he planned to gut your research division. I've been married to him for 34 years. I know how he operates. Her voice hardened. And I'm calling to tell you that I don't blame you for what you've done. Not even a little. You protected your work and your integrity. That's more than most people in your position would have managed. Colin gripped the phone tighter. Why are you telling me this? Because in about 2 hours, my husband is going to try to convince the board that this can all be salvaged, that they can sue you or smear you or somehow spin this whole disaster into something survivable. She paused. I wanted you to know that he can't. The board's already turned on him. The investors are fleeing. The company is finished. And he did it to himself. What about Mara? Mara's on a plane to Switzerland as we speak. Rehab facility, very exclusive, very private. She'll be there for 6 months, minimum. Away from social media, away from the press, away from consequences she earned. Margaret's voice cracked. I don't expect you to forgive her. I don't forgive her. But I wanted you to know that she won't be a problem for you going forward. And you? What happens to you? I'll be fine. I have my own money, my own life separate from Robert's empire. I'll file for divorce within the week. Start over. She laughed bitterly. At 62 years old, I get to figure out who I am without the Vexler name. Should be interesting. Colin didn't know what to say. This woman, who owed him nothing, was laying bare her family's destruction with a kind of raw honesty he hadn't expected. Mrs. Vexler, I appreciate the call, but I want you to know, what I didn't do it to hurt you or your family. I did it to protect mine. I know, and that's exactly why you won. Her voice softened. Good luck, Mr. Reddick. I hope whatever you're building changes the world. God knows it could use some changing. The line went dead. Colin stood by the window for a long moment, watching the sunrise paint the warehouse district in shades of gold and rust. Somewhere in the city, an empire was collapsing. A family was fracturing. A woman who'd spent 6 decades as a Vexler was preparing to become someone new. And here, in a converted warehouse that smelled like solder and ambition, a team of brilliant underdogs was preparing to rise. Boss? Chen called from across the lab. Presentation's ready if you want to review it. Colin turned back to the team, pushed Margaret Vexler's call from his mind, and focused on what came next. Show me. The presentation was brilliant. 30 slides of technical specifications, demonstration videos, market analysis, and projected growth that would make any investor salivate. Chen had included side-by-side comparisons with existing quantum computing systems, showing how Reddick's processors were smaller, faster, and more stable. There were applications in medicine, climate modeling, artificial intelligence, cryptography, every major tech sector represented. This is perfect, Colin said finally. Torres is going to love this. Or steal it, Jennifer warned. Make sure you're presenting from a secure device, and don't leave them with any copies they can reproduce. Already planned for. I'm bringing a tablet that will wipe itself if anyone tries to access the files without my fingerprint. Colin checked his watch. 8:15. The stock market would open in an hour and 15 minutes. All right. Chen, you're in charge until I get back from the Solvane meeting. If anything urgent comes up, I'll handle it, Chen promised. You just focus on not getting screwed by another rich family. Colin smiled grimly. Lightning doesn't strike twice. Yeah, but you're walking into a lightning storm voluntarily this time. Fair point. Colin spent the next hour reviewing every detail of the presentation, memorizing talking points, preparing for questions Torres might ask. At 9 a.m., he opened a live stock market feed on one of the monitors and watched the countdown to opening bell. The entire lab gathered around to watch. At 9:30 Eastern Time, the market opened. Vexler Industries' stock price appeared on screen, $47.23 per share. Then it started dropping. $47 became $46. $46 became $44. Within 5 minutes, it hit $40. Within 10 minutes, $38. The descent was brutal, relentless, an avalanche of selling pressure as investors fled a sinking ship. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. It's a bloodbath. The financial news networks were losing their minds, commentators talking over each other in their excitement to explain the collapse. Headlines scrolled across the bottom of screens. Vexler Industries in freefall. Worst opening hour since 2008. Investors panic as acquisition deal collapses. By 10 a.m., the stock had dropped 42%. Trading was halted twice due to volatility. When it resumed, the selling continued. Colin watched with a mixture of awe and something that felt uncomfortably close to guilt. This wasn't just numbers on a screen. This was people's jobs, people's retirement accounts, people's futures tied to a company that was imploding because its heir couldn't control her contempt for 15 minutes. "They're reporting that 2 board members have resigned," Jennifer said, reading from her phone, "and 3 major investors have filed suit against Robert Vexler personally for gross negligence." "He's done," Patterson said flatly. "Stick a fork in him. That man's career is over." The lab's phone rang, their main business line that almost never got calls. Chen answered, listened for a moment, then covered the mouthpiece. "It's for you, boss. Reporter from the Wall Street Journal says it's urgent." Colin took the phone. "This is Colin Reddick." "Mr. Reddick, David Chen from the Journal. I'm working on a piece about the Vexler situation, and I'd love to get a quote from you, specifically about the dignity clause and whether you intentionally provoked last night's incident." "No comment. But surely you can tell us something about, I showed up to a dinner I was invited to. I was polite and respectful. What happened after that is on video for everyone to see. That's all I have to say." He hung up before the reporter could push further. "They're trying to spin it," Maria said angrily. "Trying to make you the bad guy somehow." "Let them try. The video speaks for itself." Colin checked his watch again. 11 a.m. 3 hours until the Solvayne meeting. "I need to go home, change, look like someone Torres would actually want to partner with. Chen, call me if anything explodes. More than what's already exploding. You know what I mean." The drive home took him back through the waking city, now fully alive with mid-morning traffic. He passed the Bellecourt, where news vans were still parked outside like vultures, cameramen filming stand-ups in front of the restaurant where it all went down. He passed Vexler Industries headquarters, where a crowd of protesters had gathered with signs reading, "Eat the rich," and "Karma is real." He passed luxury apartment buildings and corporate towers and all the monuments to wealth that made up the city's skyline. And then he was back in his neighborhood, where those monuments gave way to struggle and survival, where the American dream felt more fragile but somehow more real. Arya was awake when he got home, eating cereal at the wobbling table and watching news coverage on her tablet. She looked up as he entered. "Dad, you're famous, like really famous. There are memes about you." "So I've heard." "And the stock market thing. Dad, did we do that? Did we make a whole company crash?" Colin sat down across from her. "We didn't make them do anything. They made choices, bad choices, cruel choices. We just made sure those choices had consequences." "Is that the same thing as revenge?" The question cut straight to the heart of it. Colin thought carefully before answering. "No. Revenge is about hurting someone because they hurt you. Justice is about making sure actions have appropriate consequences. What we did, what I did, was justice. But people are losing jobs. People who didn't do anything wrong." "You're right, and that's the hardest part." Colin took her hand. "When systems are corrupt, when leadership is toxic, innocent people get hurt when that system falls apart. It's not fair, it's not right. But it's also not a reason to let the corruption continue. Sometimes you have to tear down something broken to build something better." Arya considered this, her young face serious. "Mom would say we have to help the innocent people, the ones losing jobs." Mom would be right. Colin squeezed her hand. "And we will. When this is all done, when we've built something successful, we'll create jobs. Good jobs. Fair jobs. We'll do it the right way. Promise?" "Promise." He left Arya finishing her cereal and went to change. The suit he'd bought for his wife's funeral still fit, barely. It had been 4 years since he'd worn it, and in that time he'd lost weight from stress and gained it back from Arya's determination to make sure he ate. The fabric pulled slightly across the shoulders. The pants were a half-inch too short, but it would do. It was clean, it was professional, and paired with a fresh shirt and his only decent tie, it would show Torres that he took this meeting seriously. He stared at himself in the bathroom mirror, the suit that had seen him through the worst day of his life. The bruise that marked his triumph over people who thought him worthless, the expression of a man standing at the edge of something that would either make or break everything he'd built. "You've got this," he told his reflection. "You didn't survive the last 4 years to fail now." His phone buzzed. A message from Torres. "Car's on its way. Driver will be there at 1 p.m. See you soon." Colin's stomach clenched with nerves and anticipation in equal measure. This was it. The moment that would determine whether last night's sacrifice meant anything or was just a Pyrrhic victory. He returned to the living room where Arya had abandoned her cereal to work on her notebooks. She looked up as he entered, and her eyes widened. "Dad, you look ridiculous, important." She stood up and straightened his tie with the solemn gravity of someone performing a sacred ritual. "You look like someone who changes things." Colin's throat tightened. "I learned from the best. Your mom was the real change maker in this family." "Was, but you're still here, so now it's your turn." Arya stepped back, surveying her work. "Go show them what Reddix can do." At precisely 1 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled up outside their building, so out of place in this neighborhood that 2 people actually stopped on the sidewalk to stare. The driver, a professional in a suit far nicer than Colin's, stepped out and opened the rear door. Colin kissed Arya goodbye, promised to call her as soon as the meeting ended, and walked out to the car feeling like he was stepping into another world. The interior smelled like leather and money. The seats were heated despite the mild weather. Classical music played softly from speakers he couldn't see. As they pulled away from the curb, Colin watched his apartment building recede in the side mirror, that humble structure that had been his entire world, now about to become just one chapter in a larger story. The drive took 40 minutes, heading west toward the industrial parks where tech companies had built their empires on cheap land and big dreams. Solvane Dynamics campus was impossible to miss. 5 gleaming buildings arranged around a central courtyard, all glass and steel and architectural ambition. Solar panels covered every roof. Electric vehicle charging stations lined the parking lots. The landscaping was immaculate, all native plants and sustainable design. This was what success looked like. The driver pulled up to the main building's entrance where Richard Torres himself stood waiting. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing slacks and a button-down shirt with no tie, the uniform of a tech CEO who'd earned the right to dress however he wanted. When Colin stepped out of the car, Torres extended his hand immediately. "Colin Reddick, hell of a 24 hours you've had." "That's one way to put it, Mr. Torres." "Richard, please." Torres gestured toward the building. "Come on in. Let me show you what we've built here, and then we can talk about what we might build together." The tour was impressive and clearly designed to be. Torres walked Colin through fabrication facilities that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Clean rooms where processors were manufactured with nanometer precision. Research labs where teams worked on problems Colin had only dreamed of tackling. The scale of it was overwhelming. Hundreds of employees, billions of dollars in infrastructure, decades of accumulated expertise. And Torres wanted to put all of it at Colin's disposal. They ended in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the campus. Coffee appeared, brought by an assistant who vanished before Colin could thank her. Torres settled into a chair and studied Colin with the expression of someone evaluating a particularly interesting puzzle. "So," Torres said finally, "tell me why I shouldn't be terrified of you." Colin blinked. "Excuse me?" "You took down a company worth $300 million in less than 12 hours. Destroyed a family's reputation, turned yourself into a folk hero and a cautionary tale simultaneously." Torres sipped his coffee. "That's impressive. It's also slightly terrifying. So convince me that you're someone I want as a partner and not someone who'll burn my company down if I look at you wrong." The bluntness was refreshing. Colin found himself smiling despite his nerves. "I didn't take down Vexler Industries. Mara Vexler did that when she decided to film herself committing assault. I just made sure there were consequences." "But you set the trap." "I protected myself with a legal clause that should never have needed to exist. If they'd treated me with basic human dignity, that clause would have stayed dormant forever." Colin leaned forward. "Richard, I'm not interested in destroying companies or playing power games. I'm interested in building technology that matters. The Vexlers tried to steal that from me. I stopped them. That's all." Is it? Torres pulled out a tablet and brought up the video, Mara's Instagram post that had started everything. Because watching this, I see a man who knows exactly what he's doing. You didn't fight back, didn't defend yourself, just let her bury herself while cameras rolled. That's not luck. That's strategy. Survival, Colin's voice hardened. My wife died because pharmaceutical companies care more about profits than patients. I've spent the last 4 years building technology that could help people like her, and I've watched vultures circle, waiting for me to fail so they could pick over the corpse of my work. So yes, I learned to be strategic. I learned to protect what I build. If that makes me dangerous, so be it. Torres studied him for a long moment, then smiled. Good. That's the answer I wanted to hear. Because, Colin, I don't want a partner who's naive. I don't want someone who'll get eaten alive by the first predator who comes sniffing around. I want someone who can survive in this industry's bloodbath and still keep their integrity intact. He set the tablet aside. You've proven you can do that. Now let's talk about what we can build together. For the next 2 hours, they discussed terms. Torres laid out Sylvain's offer in detail. 60% equity for Reddick, 40% for Sylvain. Full IP protection with Colin maintaining creative control over research directions. Access to Sylvain's manufacturing, distribution, and marketing infrastructure. Legal team, HR support, everything a growing company needed. In exchange, Sylvain got 40% of profits and first right of refusal on any future acquisitions. It's a good deal, Jennifer Park said over speakerphone when Colin called her in to consult. Better than good, actually. I don't see any poison pills or hidden landmines. This is legitimate. What's the catch? Colin asked Torres directly. The catch is that we're betting on you. If your technology doesn't pan out, if you can't scale, if the market doesn't materialize, we lose big. Torres shrugged. But I've been doing this for 40 years. I can tell the difference between hype and substance. You've got substance, so we'll take the risk. And if we succeed? If you succeed, we both make more money than God and maybe change the world in the process. Your medical applications alone. Colin, if you can do half of what your patents suggest, you'll save millions of lives. That's worth more than any dollar figure. Colin thought of Sarah, of Arya's notebooks full of innovations, of every person who'd ever faced the same devastating diagnosis his wife had received. I'll need guarantees in writing that the medical research continues, that it stays affordable, that we don't become another pharmaceutical company that prices people out of life-saving treatments. Done. We'll write it into the partnership agreement, binding clauses that put accessibility ahead of maximum profit on the medical side. Torres extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Colin looked at that offered hand, the handshake that would change everything, that would take him from struggling single dad to legitimate tech entrepreneur, that would give Arya the future she deserved and his work the platform it needed. He thought about the champagne-soaked shirt from last night, carefully bagged and preserved as evidence he'd never need to use. He thought about Mara's handprint on his face, already fading but captured forever in photos and videos. He thought about Margaret Vexler's phone call, the resignation in her voice as she watched her family's empire burn. He thought about Arya at their wobbling table, designing the future with nothing but brilliance and determination. And he shook Richard Torres's hand. We have a deal. The paperwork would take days to finalize, Torres explained. Lawyers would need to review everything. Documents would need signing. Press releases would need crafting. But the handshake was binding in the way that mattered. Two people who'd looked each other in the eye and decided to build something together. We'll announce it at the Innovation Gala tomorrow night, Torres said as they walked back toward the exit. Black tie event, all the major players in tech and finance. Perfect venue to introduce our partnership and your technology to the world. Colin's stomach dropped. Tomorrow night? That's fast. That's necessary. Strike while the iron's hot. Right now, everyone in the industry is talking about you. By next week, you'll be old news. We announce tomorrow, and we control the narrative. Torres clapped him on the shoulder. Don't worry, we'll handle the logistics. You just show up, look brilliant, and try not to let anyone else slap you. The joke fell flat. Colin managed a weak smile. As the Mercedes carried him back across the city toward his neighborhood, Colin's phone exploded with notifications he'd been ignoring during the meeting. Messages from Chen. Boss, 3 more companies called. Microsoft offered $80 million. Google offered 120. A text from Marcus Webb. Vexler officially filed for bankruptcy protection. You killed them. Hope you're happy. Was he happy? Colin stared out the window at the passing city, trying to identify what he felt. Relief, certainly. Vindication, exhaustion, anticipation for what came next. But happy? Not quite. Too much collateral damage, too many innocent people hurt because corrupt leadership had finally faced consequences. His phone rang. Arya. Dad, are you okay? You've been gone forever. I'm fine, honey. On my way home now. And Arya, he smiled despite everything. We did it, Solvane Dynamics, full partnership, everything we talked about. Her squeal of joy was so loud he had to pull the phone away from his ear. Are you serious, Dad? Oh my God, does this mean... It means everything changes. New apartment, new school if you want it, new life. Colin's throat tightened. Everything your mom wanted for you. For us, Arya corrected. Everything she wanted for us. When Colin arrived home, Arya launched herself at him with enough force to nearly knock him over. They stood in the doorway of their tiny apartment, their soon-to-be former apartment, holding each other while the weight of 4 years of struggle and loss and determination finally began to lift. We have to go to a gala tomorrow night, Colin said eventually. Fancy event, black tie. They're announcing the partnership. Arya pulled back, her eyes wide. A gala? I don't have anything to wear to a gala. We'll figure it out. Emergency shopping trip in the morning? Can we afford it? The question gutted him, his 9-year-old daughter asking if they could afford clothes because she'd learned too young that money was always a concern. Yes, we can afford it now. They spent the evening planning, dreaming, imagining the future that was suddenly within reach. Arya pulled out her notebooks and showed Colin 3 new designs she'd worked on during his absence. He helped her with the math, and together they refined concepts that might someday revolutionize computing or medicine or both. At midnight, Colin's phone buzzed with a news alert. Robert Vexler steps down as CEO, cites personal matters. Company enters bankruptcy protection. He showed it to Arya, who was still awake despite the late hour. Is that because of us? She asked quietly. That's because of him. Because of choices he made, corners he cut, people he hurt. Colin put his arm around her. We just made sure those choices finally caught up with him. On TV, financial analysts were still dissecting the Vexler collapse, calling it one of the most dramatic corporate implosions in recent memory. Social media was ablaze with hot takes and conspiracy theories and amateur investigations into the Vexler family history. Someone had dug up documents showing a pattern of exploitation and predatory business practices going back decades. The truth was coming out. All of it. And tomorrow night, at a gala filled with the most powerful people in technology and finance, Colin would stand on stage with Richard Torres and announce their partnership. Would show the world that the nobody in the repair shop had built something extraordinary. Would prove that underestimating someone based on their neighborhood or their clothes or their quiet demeanor was the kind of mistake that toppled empires. Real power didn't announce itself, Colin had always believed. Tomorrow night, the world would finally understand why. The morning sun brought with it a city transformed. Overnight, the Vexler story had metastasized from business news into a cultural phenomenon that transcended the financial pages and invaded every corner of public consciousness. Colin woke to find himself on the front page of 3 major newspapers, his bruised face staring back from newsstands across the city. The headlines competed for the most dramatic framing. David defeats Goliath in tech showdown. The slap heard round Wall Street. Humble repairman topples empire. Arya was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the couch with her tablet, scrolling through what appeared to be an endless stream of social media posts. She looked up as Colin emerged from the bedroom, her expression caught between excitement and something that looked like concern. Dad, we're everywhere. Like, everywhere. There's a Saturday Night Live sketch about us that dropped at midnight. Jimmy Fallon did a whole segment. Someone started a subreddit that already has 200,000 members. She turned the tablet toward him. And people are showing up outside the building. Colin moved to the window and peered down at the street below. Sure enough, a small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. A mix of reporters with cameras, curious neighbors, and what appeared to be actual fans holding signs. One read Team Colin, another Dignity Dollars. "This is insane," he muttered. "This is fame," Arya corrected. "You're like a symbol now, the underdog who fought back. People are obsessed with that story." She hesitated. "Are you okay with it?" Was he? Colin watched the crowd below, feeling the weight of their attention like a physical thing pressing against his chest. He'd wanted recognition for his work, validation that years of sacrifice hadn't been wasted. But this performative worship from strangers who knew nothing about him beyond a viral video, felt hollow and vaguely uncomfortable. "I'm okay with using it," he said finally. "Tonight at the gala, all these eyes will be watching. That's good for us. Good for the company. Good for getting our technology the attention it deserves." He turned back to Arya. "But I don't have to like it." They left the apartment through the back service entrance to avoid the crowd. Colin wearing a baseball cap pulled low and Arya in oversized sunglasses that made her look like a tiny celebrity trying to go incognito. The effect was somewhat undermined when she giggled at her reflection in a car window, but they made it to his sedan without being recognized. The shopping trip was surreal. They went to a department store downtown where Colin had never shopped because the prices had always been laughably out of reach. Now, armed with the advance payment Torres had wired that morning, a gesture of good faith before the contracts were even signed, they moved through the racks with a strange mixture of excitement and guilt. "How much can we spend?" Arya asked, her hand hovering over a dress that probably cost more than their monthly grocery budget used to be. "Whatever you need, whatever you want." The words felt foreign in Colin's mouth, like speaking a language he'd studied but never actually used. "Pick something that makes you feel good." Arya chose a navy blue dress with silver threading that caught the light when she moved. It was age-appropriate, elegant, and made her look simultaneously like the child she was and the brilliant woman she was becoming. When she emerged from the fitting room wearing it, Colin felt his eyes burn with tears he refused to shed in the middle of a department store. "You look like your mother," he managed. "Mom would have hated shopping here," Arya said, but she was smiling. She would have said it was wasteful and pretentious, and we should donate the money to charity instead. She would have been right, and then she would have bought you the dress anyway because she never could say no to you. Colin adjusted the dress's collar, a gesture so achingly familiar it hurt. Sarah had always been the one to handle clothes shopping, to know what fit and what flattered. She'd be so proud of you. They bought the dress, shoes to match, and a simple silver necklace that Arya fell in love with despite insisting it was too expensive. Colin also bought himself a new suit, properly fitted this time, charcoal gray with a subtle pinstripe that the salesman assured him was very tech-forward. He had no idea what that meant, but trusted the man's expertise. As they waited for the purchases to be wrapped, Colin's phone rang. Marcus Webb. "Have you seen the latest?" The lawyer sounded breathless, like he'd been running. "Robert Vexler's holding a press conference in 20 minutes, live stream on every major news site." Colin's stomach dropped. "What's he planning?" "No idea, but his legal team's been dark since yesterday. No responses to our documentation, no counterfilings, nothing. This is either a Hail Mary or a surrender. Either way, you need to watch it." They rushed home, bags forgotten in the car trunk, and pulled up the live stream on Colin's laptop just as Robert Vexler took the podium. The press conference was being held in a generic hotel conference room, not the Vexler Industries headquarters, Colin noted. That was significant. A CEO addressing the public from neutral ground rather than his own building suggested a man already distancing himself from the empire he'd built. Vexler looked like he'd aged a decade in 48 hours. His expensive suit couldn't hide the slump in his shoulders or the shadows under his eyes. His hair, always perfectly styled in the photos Colin had seen, was disheveled. When he spoke, his voice cracked on the first word. "Thank you all for coming." But Vexler gripped the podium like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "I'm here to address the situation involving my daughter Mara, Colin Reddick, and the collapse of our planned acquisition of Reddick Quantum Systems." The camera flashes were constant, a strobe light barrage that made Vexler flinch with each burst. "First, I want to apologize to Mr. Reddick directly. What my daughter did was inexcusable, unforgivable. Her actions were violent, cruel, and completely contrary to every value I tried to instill in her. He paused, seeming to gather himself. But I'm not here to throw my daughter under the bus. She made terrible choices. But I created the environment that made those choices possible. This wasn't what Colin had expected. No deflection, no corporate doublespeak, no attempt to salvage the situation with PR spin. For 30 years, I've built Vexler Industries through aggressive acquisition strategies that prioritize profit over people. I've bought companies, stripped them for parts, and discarded what didn't fit my vision. I've undervalued brilliant work because I knew desperate people would accept lowball offers. I've created a culture where winning mattered more than integrity. Vexler's voice strengthened, gaining a bitter edge. I taught my daughter, through my actions, if not my words, that people could be treated as disposable if they didn't meet our standards of success. And 2 nights ago, she demonstrated exactly how well she'd learned that lesson. Arya grabbed Colin's hand, squeezing tight. Mr. Reddick didn't destroy my company, Vexler continued. I destroyed my company through decades of toxic leadership that finally caught up with me. My daughter's assault was simply the match that lit a fuse I'd been laying for years. He looked directly into the camera, and for a moment it felt like he was staring right at Colin through the screen. I underestimated you, Mr. Reddick. Thought you were just another desperate inventor I could exploit. That was my fatal mistake. You weren't desperate. You were strategic. You protected your work, set boundaries I didn't even know existed, and when those boundaries were violated, you enforced consequences. A reporter shouted a question that the microphones didn't catch. Vexler ignored it. I'm here to announce my permanent resignation as CEO of Vexler Industries, effective immediately. The board will appoint an interim leadership team to oversee the bankruptcy proceedings. All personal assets not protected by pre-existing trusts will be liquidated to satisfy creditor claims. I won't be walking away rich, if that's what you're wondering. I'll be walking away broke and disgraced, which is exactly what I deserve. The press corps erupted in shouted questions. Vexler held up a hand, and remarkably, they quieted. My daughter is receiving treatment at a private facility in Switzerland. She'll be there for a minimum of 6 months, possibly longer. When she returns, she'll face whatever legal consequences her actions warrant. I won't be using my money or influence to shield her from accountability. His voice cracked again. I've failed her as a father. The least I can do now is not fail her as an example of how to take responsibility for your actions. He stepped away from the podium, ignoring the explosion of questions, and disappeared through a side door. The live stream cut to stunned anchors struggling to process what they'd just witnessed. Colin sat in silence, staring at the screen. He actually took responsibility, Arya said quietly. Like real responsibility, not the fake corporate kind. He did. Colin felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition that Robert Vexler was at least trying to be better than he'd been. Doesn't undo the damage, doesn't change what happened, but it's something. His phone exploded with messages. Marcus Webb. Holy shit! Did not see that coming. Thomas Chen. Boss, this changes nothing legally but everything optically. You're not just the victim anymore, you're the catalyst for actual change. Jennifer Park. Vexler's admission just made our legal case airtight. If we wanted to pursue damages, we could bury what's left of his company. Your call. Colin didn't want to bury anything, didn't want more destruction. He just wanted to build what he'd always been trying to build. Technology that mattered, a future that honored his wife's memory, a life where his daughter could thrive. He texted back to Jennifer. No damages. Let it end here. Her response was immediate. You're a better person than I am, but okay, it's over. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. A stylist arrived at 3, sent by Solvain, Torres's assistant had explained, to make sure Colin looked camera-ready for the gala. The woman, whose name was Michaela, and who had apparently styled half of Silicon Valley's elite, took one look at Colin's new suit and nodded approvingly. Good bones. We can work with this. She circled him like a sculptor evaluating marble. The bruise is actually perfect. Makes you look like a warrior. We'll enhance it with some subtle makeup, make sure it photographs well. You want to make the bruise more visible? Colin asked incredulously. Darling, that bruise is your brand right now. It's visual shorthand for everything you've been through. We don't hide it. We own it. She pulled out a makeup kit that looked like it could service a Broadway production. Trust me on this. An hour later, Colin barely recognized himself in the mirror. The bruise had been subtly enhanced to look worse than it actually was. Deeper purple, sharper edges. His hair had been styled in a way that looked casual, but probably required more product than he'd used in his entire life. The suit fit perfectly. The shirt was crisp white with subtle silver cufflinks Torres had sent over, and the overall effect was somewhere between tech visionary and bruised but unbroken hero. "You look like someone from a movie," Arya said, staring at her father with wide eyes. "I feel ridiculous." "You look important. There's a difference." She was already dressed in her new outfit, and Michaela had worked similar magic on her hair, pulling it into an elegant updo that made her look at least 3 years older. "We're really doing this, aren't we? Going to a gala with billionaires and celebrities and everything? We're really doing this. What if I say something stupid? What if I trip? What if—" Colin knelt down so they were eye level. "What if you're exactly who you are? Brilliant, kind, and braver than most adults I know. And that's more than enough." Arya took a shaky breath and nodded. The car Torres sent was different from yesterday's Mercedes. This was a full limousine, sleek and black and so obviously expensive that neighbors came out of their apartments to stare as Colin and Arya climbed inside. The interior was bigger than their bathroom, with leather seats, a minibar that Colin pointedly ignored, and ambient lighting that shifted through subtle colors. "This is insane," Arya whispered, running her hand along the leather. "People actually ride in cars like this?" "Apparently we're people now." Colin felt the strangeness of it too, the cognitive dissonance of being treated like someone important when just days ago he'd been counting quarters for laundry money. The gala was being held at the Meridian Grand, a hotel so exclusive that Colin had walked past it hundreds of times without ever imagining he'd go inside. The building was a monument to old money and new wealth mingling in uncomfortable harmony. Classical architecture wrapped around modern luxury, like a museum that also happened to be a party venue. Red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance, lined with photographers and reporters held back by velvet ropes. As their limousine joined the queue of vehicles dropping off passengers, Colin felt his heart rate spike. "There are so many cameras," Arya said, her voice small. "We don't have to do the red carpet. Torres said there's a side entrance for people who want privacy." But Arya was already shaking her head, her jaw set in that determined way that reminded Colin achingly of Sarah. "No, we earned this. We're walking through the front door." When their car reached the drop-off point, a uniformed attendant opened the door and extended his hand to help Arya out. She took it with the grace of someone who'd been doing this her whole life, and Colin followed, stepping onto red carpet for the first time in his life. The camera flashes were immediate and overwhelming. Photographers shouted questions and instructions that blurred together into incomprehensible noise. Colin kept one hand on Arya's shoulder, anchoring them both as they moved forward through the gauntlet of lenses and lights. "Mr. Reddick, look this way." "Colin, how does it feel to take down a billionaire?" "Who are you wearing tonight?" "Is this your daughter?" "Arya, what do you think about your dad being a hero?" They kept walking, Colin offering polite smiles but no comments, until they reached the entrance where Torres stood waiting with the satisfied expression of someone whose gamble was paying off spectacularly. "There's my partner," Torres announced loudly enough for nearby reporters to hear. He shook Colin's hand, then turned to Arya. "And this must be the famous Arya. Your father tells me you're the real brains of the operation." Arya's shy smile transformed into something more confident. "I just help with the math." "Just the math? That's like saying Mozart just helped with the music." Torres offered his arm in an old-fashioned gesture. "May I escort you inside? Your father and I have some people we need to impress." The interior of the Meridian Grand made the Bellacourt look like a chain restaurant. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars hung from gilded ceilings. Marble floors polished to mirror brightness reflected the light into kaleidoscopic patterns. Every surface seemed designed to announce wealth so excessive it had transcended mere money and become art. The ballroom was filled with people Colin recognized from magazine covers and tech blogs. CEOs of major corporations, venture capitalists who decided which companies lived or died, celebrities who'd invested in Silicon Valley startups, politicians who regulated the industry. The combined net worth in this single room probably exceeded the GDP of small nations, and they all turned to look as Colin Reddick walked in. The change in ambient noise was subtle but unmistakable. Conversations didn't stop, but they shifted. Eyes tracked Colin's movement across the room, some with curiosity, others with calculation, a few with what might have been respect. "They're staring," Arya whispered. "Let them," Torres said calmly. "Staring means they're paying attention. Attention is currency in this world." He guided them toward a cluster of people near the bar. "Now, let me introduce you to some folks who are very interested in what you're building." The next hour was a masterclass in networking that Colin hadn't realized he needed. Torres moved them through the crowd like a conductor orchestrating a symphony, making strategic introductions and highlighting Colin's work without ever making it feel like a sales pitch. "Colin, this is Patricia Zhao, CTO of Helix Biotech. Patricia, Colin's quantum processors have applications for protein folding simulations that could revolutionize drug development. Mr. Reddick, James Okonkwo from the Department of Energy. His work on quantum computing for climate modeling is directly relevant to your clean energy initiatives. Colin, you need to meet Dr. Sarah Patel. Yes, another Sarah, small world. She runs the Gates Foundation's technology division. Your medical applications would align perfectly with their global health objectives." Each introduction led to conversations that ranged from genuinely interesting to tediously technical to surprisingly emotional. Dr. Patel's eyes had actually filled with tears when Colin explained the cancer treatment modeling applications he'd developed in Sarah's memory. "My mother," Patel said quietly, "pancreatic cancer, gone in 4 months. If your technology can help even one family avoid that." She handed Colin her card. "Call me Monday. We need to talk funding." Through it all, Arya stayed close to Colin's side, occasionally contributing technical insights that inevitably surprised and impressed whoever they were speaking with. A 9-year-old who could discuss quantum entanglement coherently was apparently a novelty even in a room full of technological innovation. But Colin noticed other dynamics at play too. Some people approached with barely concealed opportunism, clearly trying to position themselves for whatever success they assumed was coming. Others kept their distance, watching from afar with expressions ranging from envy to disdain. The social politics of wealth and influence were complex and often ugly, he realized. This world he was entering had its own violence, just more refined than Mara Vexler's slap. At precisely 8 p.m., the lights dimmed and a spotlight illuminated the stage at the front of the ballroom. A man in an expensive tuxedo, someone important whose name Colin had already forgotten, took the microphone and began the formal program. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the annual Innovation Gala, where we celebrate the brightest minds pushing technology forward and shaping our collective future." The standard speech, polished and meaningless. Tonight we have several exciting announcements, but first, I'd like to invite Richard Torres, CEO of Solvane Dynamics, to the stage. The applause was substantial. Torres was well liked in this crowd, his reputation for fair dealing and genuine innovation making him something of an elder statesman in Silicon Valley. Torres took the microphone with comfortable ease. "Thank you. I'll keep this brief because I know you're all here for the open bar and networking opportunities." Polite laughter. "But I do want to talk about something that's been on all our minds this week. The importance of treating people with dignity and respect, regardless of their circumstances." The room went very quiet. Everyone knew what he was referencing. 2 nights ago, a video went viral showing a young woman assaulting a man she deemed unworthy of her time. That video has sparked important conversations about privilege, power, and the cost of cruelty. But what many people don't know is that the man in that video, Colin Reddick, is one of the most brilliant innovators I've encountered in my 40 years in this industry. Torres gestured toward where Colin stood with Arya, and the spotlight swung to find them. Colin felt his chest tighten as hundreds of faces turned his way. Colin built a quantum computing company from scratch while raising a daughter alone after his wife's death. He developed technology that's 3 years ahead of our nearest competitors. He secured patents that will shape the industry for decades. And he did it all from a workshop in the Bronx while running a repair shop to keep the lights on. Torres's voice strengthened. When Vexler Industries tried to lowball him and steal his work, He outmaneuvered them legally. When their heir assaulted him publicly, he didn't retaliate. He enforced consequences through the very contract clauses they'd thought were meaningless. Colin Reddick is exactly the kind of innovator we should be celebrating and supporting. The applause started slowly, then built into something thunderous. People were standing now, a standing ovation that made Colin's face burn with embarrassment and pride in equal measure. So tonight, Torres continued, I'm thrilled to announce that Solvane Dynamics is partnering with Reddick Quantum Systems. We're providing full infrastructure support while Colin maintains majority ownership and creative control. Together, we're going to bring quantum computing applications to healthcare, climate science, artificial intelligence, and every field that needs computational power beyond what current systems can provide. More applause, somehow even louder. Colin, would you join me up here? And bring that brilliant daughter of yours. She's part of this story too. Colin's legs felt wooden as he walked toward the stage, Arya's hand tight in his. The sea of faces blurred into a collective mass of attention that felt alternately wonderful and suffocating. When they reached the stage, Torres handed Colin the microphone with an encouraging nod. Colin stared out at the audience, at people whose combined wealth and influence could reshape industries, at faces he'd seen on magazine covers, at the physical manifestation of the world he was now entering. His mind went blank. Every speech he'd half-planned evaporated. Then he felt Arya squeeze his hand, and something unlocked. I didn't prepare a speech, he admitted, and his voice came out steadier than expected. Honestly, didn't expect to be here. 2 days ago, I was getting champagne thrown at me in a restaurant. Now I'm standing on stage at a gala I couldn't have afforded to attend. Life moves fast. Scattered laughter, warm and genuine. But I want to say something about what happened. About dignity. About power. About what we choose to do when we have it. Colin's grip on the microphone tightened. My wife Sarah died 3 years ago from cancer. The treatments that might have saved her existed, but they were caught in bureaucratic delays and profit calculations and systems that valued money over lives. She died angry about that, made me promise to do something meaningful with my work, to build technology that helped people, not just enriched corporations. The ballroom was silent now, every person listening. Vexler Industries wanted to buy my technology and gut the medical applications because they weren't profitable enough yet. They offered me money I desperately needed and tried to make me believe I had no other choice. And for a while, I almost believed them. Colin looked at Arya, who was crying silently beside him. But my daughter reminded me that some things matter more than survival, that innovation without integrity is just exploitation in a different form. He turned back to the audience. What Mara Vexler did to me was cruel, humiliating, violent, but it was also honest in a way that corporate exploitation isn't. She showed me exactly what they thought of me, that I was nothing, a nobody, disposable. And in doing so, she gave me the legal justification to walk away from a deal that would have destroyed everything I'd built. Colin held up the microphone like a weapon or a torch, something powerful that demanded attention. I'm not here to be anyone's underdog story. I'm not here to be the plucky repairman who got lucky. I'm here because I built something revolutionary, protected it strategically, and refused to let people steal my work just because they assumed I was too desperate or too naive to fight back. The applause started again, but Colin spoke over it, his voice rising. So here's what I want everyone in this room to understand. The world is full of brilliant people in struggling neighborhoods and underfunded labs and cramped apartments, people who could change everything if someone gave them a chance, people who are dismissed because they don't look right or sound right or come from the right background. His eyes swept across the audience, making contact with as many faces as possible. Don't underestimate them. Don't exploit them. Don't assume that because someone needs opportunity, they'll accept exploitation. Because the quiet ones, the desperate ones, the ones you think are easy targets, we're not. We're strategic, we're patient. And when you finally push us too far, we don't just push back. We change the entire game. The audience erupted. People were on their feet, applauding and cheering with an enthusiasm that felt genuine rather than performative. Colin saw tears on several faces, recognized his own story reflected in eyes that understood struggle and dismissal and the long climb toward recognition. But he also saw other reactions. Discomfort on some faces, the people who'd built their empires through the exact exploitation he'd just condemned. calculation on others. Those already thinking about how to approach him, how to be on the winning side of whatever came next. Fear on a few, the ones who realized they might be the next Vexler if they weren't careful. Torres took back the microphone, grinning widely. Ladies and gentlemen, Colin Reddick and his daughter Aria. Let's give them another round of applause. As Colin and Aria left the stage, they were immediately surrounded. People pressed business cards into Colin's hands, made introductions, requested meetings. Patricia Zhao from Helix Biotech cornered him with specific technical questions about protein folding applications. James Okonkwo from the Department of Energy wanted to discuss government contracts. Someone from MIT offered Aria a scholarship on the spot. For college, they clarified, when she was ready, but they wanted to secure her commitment now. Through it all, Colin kept one hand on Aria's shoulder, anchoring them both in the chaos of attention and opportunity that threatened to sweep them away. Then the crowd parted slightly, and Colin found himself face to face with a woman in an elegant black gown that probably cost more than his car. She was in her 40s with sharp features and sharper eyes, and something about her made the air feel dangerous. Mr. Reddick, finally! She extended a hand with perfectly manicured nails painted blood red. Veronica Castellane. I'm Robert Vexler's attorney, or was until this morning when he fired his entire legal team. Colin's body went tense. I have nothing to say to you without my attorney present. Relax. I'm not here in a legal capacity. Veronica's smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm here because you just declared war on an entire industry's business model, and I wanted to see if you understood what you'd done. I understand perfectly. Do you? She stepped closer, her voice dropping. You think you won because Vexler collapsed. But Colin, there are 100 companies that operate exactly like Vexler did. Companies that buy small innovators cheap, strip them for value, and discard the rest. Companies run by people much smarter and much more vicious than Robert Vexler ever was. Let them come. I know how to protect my work now. Your work, sure. But what about you? What about that precious daughter? Veronica's eyes flicked toward Aria, who was accepting a business card from someone in a Stanford hoodie. You just painted targets on both your backs, made yourselves symbols, threats to people who've built empires on the business model you condemned. Colin felt ice in his veins. Are you threatening my daughter? I'm warning you. Veronica's expression shifted, and for a moment Colin saw something that might have been genuine concern. I've watched powerful people destroy threats before. Legal threats, physical threats, reputational destruction. They have tools you can't imagine. And you just made yourself the biggest threat to their way of operating that they've seen in decades. Then they shouldn't have operated that way. Idealism is charming. It's also dangerous. She handed him a card. When things get ugly, and they will get ugly, call me. I know how these people think, how they operate. I can help you survive what's coming. She disappeared back into the crowd before Colin could respond. Aria tugged on his sleeve. Dad? Who was that? Someone trying to scare me. Did it work? Colin looked down at his daughter, this brilliant, brave child who'd already survived more loss than most adults faced, who deserved a future free from fear and full of possibility, who Sarah had made him promise to protect at any cost. No, he lied. It didn't work. But as the gala continued around them, as people continued pressing business cards and making offers and treating Colin like the next big thing, Veronica Castellane's warning echoed in his mind. He'd thought the fight was over, thought destroying Vexler was the end. But maybe it was just the beginning. The evening wore on. Dinner was served, courses so elaborate Colin couldn't identify half the ingredients. Speeches were made by people whose names he recognized but faces blurred together. Awards were presented for innovation and philanthropy and other categories that seemed designed mainly to let wealthy people feel good about themselves. Through it all, Colin noticed other dynamics. Whispered conversations that stopped when he approached. Glances that held calculation. A few people who actively avoided him, creating clear physical distance as if his proximity might contaminate them. The social mapping of allies and enemies in a world he was only beginning to understand. At 10 p.m., Torres found them near the dessert table where Aria was methodically trying every option available. How are you holding up? Torres asked. Overwhelmed, excited, terrified. Colin kept his voice low. Someone just warned me that I'd made enemies tonight. Veronica Castellane. I saw her corner you. Torres nodded grimly. She's right, unfortunately. Your speech was brilliant. It was also a declaration that you won't play by the old rules. That scares people who've profited from those rules. Should I be worried? Yes, but not paralyzed by worry. Torres glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard. Colin, here's the truth. This industry can be as vicious as any battlefield, but it's also full of people who've been waiting for someone to stand up and say what you just said. People who are tired of exploitation passing as innovation. You're not alone in this fight. That's reassuring and terrifying in equal measure. Welcome to the big leagues, Torres clapped him on the shoulder. Now, there's someone I want you to meet, someone who can help protect you from the wolves. He led Colin across the ballroom to where a woman in her 60s stood observing the crowd with the detached interest of someone who'd seen every variation of human behavior and was no longer surprised by any of it. She wore a simple gray dress that somehow conveyed more power than anyone else's elaborate gowns, and her white hair was cut in a severe bob that suggested someone who didn't have time for frivolous styling. Colin Reddick, meet Judith Herman. She runs the most feared PR and crisis management firm in Silicon Valley. Judith, this is the man everyone's talking about. Judith's handshake was firm enough to hurt. Richard's been telling me about your situation. I watched your speech. You have a gift for pissing off exactly the wrong people while inspiring exactly the right ones. Is that a compliment? It's an observation and an offer. Judith pulled out a card, plain white with just her name and a phone number, no title or company name. I don't take many clients anymore, but when I do, I make them bulletproof. PR attacks, legal threats, reputation management, crisis response. I've handled them all. You can't afford not to have someone like me. Torres is covering the retainer as part of the partnership package. Consider it insurance against the clusterfuck that's about to rain down on you. Her smile was sharp as broken glass. And trust me, Mr. Reddick, it's coming. The Vexler situation made you famous. But fame is a double-edged sword. For every person who loves you, there are two who want to tear you down just to prove they can. Colin took the card. Why are you helping me? Because 30 years ago, I was you. Young, brilliant, screwed over by people who thought I was too naive to fight back. I got lucky, found a mentor who taught me how to survive. Now I pay that forward. Judith's expression softened fractionally. Also, I really enjoyed watching Robert Vexler's empire collapse. That man screwed over 3 of my former clients. This is the best revenge I could ask for. They talked for another 10 minutes, Judith laying out strategies for handling media attention, preparing for potential attacks, and building a public image that would insulate Colin from the worst of what was coming. Her experience was evident in every suggestion, every warning, every piece of advice that came from hard-earned wisdom. By 11 p.m., Colin was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. The constant performance of social interaction, the strategic calculation of every conversation, the awareness that he was being watched and judged and measured with every word, it was draining in ways he hadn't anticipated. Arya had fallen asleep in a chair near the wall, her head pillowed on her arms, still wearing the silver necklace that caught the light, even in rest. Colin watched her for a moment, feeling the weight of every decision he'd made that led to this moment. The dignity clause, the calculated acceptance of humiliation, the press release, the partnership, the speech. All of it for her. All of it to give her the future Sarah had dreamed of. All of it because love required sacrifice and strategy in equal measure. Torres appeared at his elbow. Your car's ready whenever you want to leave. I think you've more than earned your exit. Thank you for everything, the partnership, the support, the protection you're arranging. Colin, I'm not doing this out of charity. I'm doing it because you're going to make us both very rich and very successful. Torres smiled. But also, yeah, because it's the right thing to do. Sometimes those align. Colin gathered Arya gently, lifting her despite his protesting back. She stirred but didn't fully wake, just mumbled something about quantum coherence and settled against his shoulder. As they moved toward the exit, people parted to let them through, offering nods and quiet congratulations. The limousine ride home was silent except for Arya's soft breathing and the whisper of city traffic outside. Colin stared out the window at the passing streets, watching wealthy neighborhoods give way to struggling ones, monuments to success replaced by evidence of survival. This was his world. These streets, these people, these communities that the gala attendees probably never thought about. And in some fundamental way, despite the partnership and the newfound wealth and the opportunities opening before him, this would always be his world. These were his people. He couldn't forget that. Wouldn't forget that. Because the moment he did, the moment he started thinking like the people in that ballroom instead of the people on these streets, he'd become exactly what he'd fought against. The limousine pulled up outside their apartment building where the crowd from earlier had mercifully dispersed. Colin carried Arya upstairs, tucked her into bed still wearing her gala dress because she was sleeping too peacefully to disturb, and collapsed on his pull-out couch with his mind still racing. His phone showed 43 missed calls, over 200 text messages, and an email inbox that had exploded past the point of manageability. He ignored all of it and pulled up the photo of Sarah he kept on his lock screen, her smile bright and real, taken during a good day between bad treatments, when they'd still believed she might win. "We did it," he whispered to her memory. "Made the breakthrough, protected the work, gave Arya a shot at the life you wanted for her." His voice cracked. "I hope you're proud. I hope I did this right." Sarah's frozen smile offered no answers, but Colin felt something settle in his chest anyway. A sense that he'd honored her memory, that the sacrifice and strategy and pain had meant something. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Veronica Castellane's warning would prove prescient. Enemies were already mobilizing, threats being calculated, attacks being prepared. The world of tech and innovation and wealth was about to test him in ways that would make Mara Wexler's slap feel gentle by comparison. But tonight, in this moment, Colin Reddick allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Victory. Real, earned, undeniable victory. He'd walked into that restaurant as a target. He'd left as a weapon. And tomorrow, the real war would begin. The attack came on Monday morning exactly as Veronica Castellane had predicted. Colin woke to his phone vibrating itself nearly off the nightstand with incoming notifications. The screen showed a flood of alerts, news articles, social media tags, text messages from people whose numbers he didn't recognize. His stomach dropped before he even opened the first one. The headline from TechBuzz, one of the industry's most influential blogs, hit like a sledgehammer. Reddick Quantum Systems, revolutionary tech or elaborate fraud? Former colleagues raise serious questions. Colin sat up so fast his vision swam. He opened the article with shaking hands. The piece was devastating and clearly coordinated. 3 engineers who'd worked briefly at Reddick Quantum Systems, all of whom had been fired for cause over the past 2 years, were now claiming that Colin had stolen their work, that the patents were based on collaborative efforts he'd taken sole credit for, that the company's technology didn't actually work as advertised. Quotes that had clearly been fed to them by lawyers peppered the article, each one calibrated to cause maximum damage. Colin Reddick presented himself as this humble genius, but the reality is he's a skilled manipulator who knows how to take credit for other people's innovations, said Derek Hammond, a programmer Colin had fired for repeatedly showing up drunk. The quantum processors everyone's excited about? That was a team effort. Colin just made sure his name was on all the patents. Another fired employee, Melissa Torres, no relation to Richard, claimed she'd witnessed Colin falsifying test results. The prototypes don't work nearly as well as he claims. He's been inflating performance metrics to attract investors. It's classic vaporware dressed up as innovation. The article included technical details that sounded credible to anyone who didn't actually understand quantum computing. It cited anonymous sources within the industry who corroborated the claims. It even had quotes from a patent attorney suggesting there might be grounds for legal challenges to Colin's intellectual property. Colin's hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped the phone. This wasn't just bad. This was existential. If people believed these allegations, the Solvane partnership could collapse. Investors would flee. Everything he'd built would disintegrate, not through actual failure, but through manufactured doubt. The bedroom door opened and Arya appeared, still wearing yesterday's gala dress, her hair a mess from sleep. One look at Colin's face and her expression shifted from sleepy to alert. "Dad?" What's wrong? Nothing. Go back to bed. Dad. She crossed the room and sat beside him. What happened? Colin handed her the phone, watched her face as she read, watched the progression from confusion to understanding to anger that mirrored his own emotional journey through the article. This is all lies, she said flatly. Derek was drunk half the time he was here. Melissa was stealing equipment. You fired them because they were terrible at their jobs. I know, but it doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if people believe it. His phone rang. Marcus Webb, calling at 6:30 in the morning. Tell me you've seen it, the lawyer said without preamble. I've seen it. There are 4 more articles dropping this morning. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, and Wired. All with similar allegations. This is a coordinated attack, Colin. Someone hired a PR firm to destroy you. Colin's blood ran cold. Can we fight it? We can and we will. I've already drafted cease and desist letters to the fired employees for defamation. Jennifer Park is pulling together documentation proving you developed the core technology independently. Thomas Chen is preparing technical demonstrations to disprove the vaporware claims. Webb paused. But Colin, this is going to be ugly. They've seeded enough doubt that even when we prove them wrong, some of it will stick. That's how these attacks work. Who's behind it? Working on that. The fired employees didn't coordinate this themselves. They're not smart enough. Someone approached them, probably paid them, definitely coached them. I'm betting on a competing firm that sees you as a threat. Maybe someone who was planning their own quantum computing play and realized you're 3 years ahead of them. Another call was coming through. Richard Torres. I have to go, Colin told Webb. Keep me updated. He switched over. Richard, I know. My team briefed me 10 minutes ago. Torres sounded more angry than worried. This is exactly the kind of chicken shit move that makes me hate this industry sometimes. But Colin, listen to me. We're not backing down, not even a little. Solvane stands behind you completely. You should wait. Let me prove the allegations false before you commit. We've already committed. Partnership announcement went public last night. Walking it back now would make us look weak, and you look guilty. Torres's voice hardened. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to get dressed, go to your lab, and prepare a technical demonstration that proves beyond any doubt that your technology works exactly as advertised. I'm sending my head of PR and our chief technology officer. They'll document everything, verify independently that your claims are legitimate, and we'll hold a press conference this afternoon showing the world that these allegations are bullshit. Richard, if this damages Solvane's reputation, then we deal with it. But Colin, I didn't build a $50 billion company by running scared every time someone threw a punch. You took a hit. Now we hit back, harder. He paused. Unless you're telling me the allegations are true. They're not. Every word is a lie. Then we have nothing to worry about except making sure everyone else knows that too. I'll have people at your lab by 8. Be ready. The call ended, leaving Colin staring at his phone in a mixture of terror and determination. Arya was watching him with those 2 old eyes that had already seen too much loss. We're going to prove them wrong, Colin said, speaking as much to himself as to her. We're going to show everyone that the technology is real, that the work is legitimate, that these people are lying. I know we are. Arya's voice was steady. Because we have the truth. They just have lies someone paid them to tell. Colin pulled her into a hug, drawing strength from her certainty. When did you get so wise? I learned from watching you fight back. Now get dressed. You've got a war to win. By 7:30, Colin was at the lab where his team had already assembled, every person looking exhausted and angry in equal measure. Thomas Chen was setting up testing equipment with the manic energy of someone running on coffee and rage. Jennifer Park was on the phone with what sounded like opposing counsel, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Maria Rodriguez was pulling together documentation while muttering curses in Spanish that Colin was probably better off not understanding. Boss, Chen looked up as Colin entered. Tell me how you want to do this. We can run full diagnostic tests, demonstrate processing speeds, show the medical modeling applications, prove the coherence times. Whatever you need to shut these lying assholes down. Everything. I want tests so comprehensive that there's no possible room for doubt. Colin moved to the main workbench where their latest prototype sat, the quantum processor that represented years of work and innovation. Richard Torres is sending people to verify independently. I want them to see that we're not hiding anything. The morning became a blur of preparation. They set up cameras to document every test. They prepared comparison data showing their processors against existing commercial systems. They compiled patent filing dates proving Colin had developed the core concepts before the fired employees had even been hired. They gathered performance metrics, peer-reviewed papers, independent verification from university labs that had tested their prototypes. At 8 a.m. precisely, Torres arrived with an entourage that included Solvain's CTO, their head of PR, 2 independent engineers Colin recognized from MIT, and Judith Herman, the crisis management specialist from the gala. Judith took one look at the assembled documentation and smiled like a shark scenting blood. Good, you're prepared. Now let's destroy these people. The technical demonstration took 3 hours. Colin walked the Solvain team and independent engineers through every aspect of their quantum processors, explaining the technology in exhaustive detail, while Chen ran tests that proved the performance metrics were not only accurate, but actually conservative. The processors were faster, more stable, and more capable than Colin had publicly claimed. One of the MIT engineers, a woman named Dr. Sarah Washington, kept shaking her head in amazement. This is extraordinary. The coherence times alone. Colin, you're not 3 years ahead of the competition. You're 5, maybe 7 years ahead. This technology is going to revolutionize the entire field. That's what we've been trying to tell people, Maria said from her workstation. But everyone was too busy assuming a guy from the Bronx couldn't possibly have built something this advanced. Torres's CTO, a quiet man named David Park, was recording everything on a tablet. I'll have a full verification report ready by noon, but I can tell you right now, these allegations are complete fabrications. The technology is real, the performance claims are understated if anything, and there's clear documentation proving Colin developed the core concepts independently. Judith was already typing on her phone, coordinating the counterattack. We'll hold the press conference at 2 p.m. That gives us time to prepare a comprehensive rebuttal, get the verification report finalized, and coordinate with friendly journalists who will help us control the narrative. By tonight, everyone pushing this fraud story is going to look like either a liar or an idiot, preferably both. Colin felt something in his chest loosen slightly. They had proof. They had verification. They had truth on their side. But Judith wasn't done. We also need to identify who's behind this. The fired employees didn't coordinate this attack themselves. Someone hired them, coached them, probably paid them substantial money to lie. We find out who, we cut off the head of the snake. Marcus Webb arrived at 10 with news. Got the identity. Took some digging through shell companies and intermediary payments, but we traced the money back to its source. He pulled up documents on his laptop. Company called Nexus Quantum Technologies, privately held, venture capital funded, been developing competing quantum computing systems for the past 18 months. They were planning a major product launch next quarter. Were? Colin asked. Past tense, because you just made their entire development pipeline obsolete. Your technology is so far ahead of theirs that they're looking at maybe $50 million in sunk R&D costs with no viable product to show for it. Webb smiled grimly. So they decided to eliminate the competition through character assassination instead of actual innovation. Can we prove it? Working on it. The paper trail is deliberately obscured, but we've got enough to make the connection credible. And if we apply pressure to the fired employees, offer them immunity in exchange for testimony about who approached them, Webb shrugged. People fold fast when they realize they're going to take the fall alone. Judith looked up from her phone. Derek Hammond just posted an apology on Twitter. Well, not an apology exactly, but a clarification that his comments were taken out of context. He's already backpedaling. Because he just realized he committed defamation on the record and we have the resources to bury him legally, Jennifer said with satisfaction. Amateur hour. By noon, the verification report was complete. David Park read sections aloud to the assembled group, his voice clinical and precise as he dismantled every allegation methodically. The technology worked as advertised. The patents were legitimate and properly filed. Colin's claims about performance were accurate and in some cases understated. The allegations of fraud were without merit and contradicted by extensive documentation and independent testing. The press conference was held at Solvane Dynamics headquarters in a room set up specifically for major announcements. Every tech journalist in the city had been invited, along with financial reporters and even a few mainstream media outlets who'd picked up the story of the fraud allegations. The room was packed, cameras rolling, recorders running. Richard Torres opened the proceedings. Thank you all for coming on short notice. By now, you've all seen the allegations made against Colin Reddick and Reddick Quantum Systems. Those allegations are false. Completely, demonstrably, provably false. And we're here today to show you exactly why. He turned the podium over to David Park, who walked through the verification process in technical detail that made half the journalist's eyes glaze over but was necessary to establish credibility. He showed test results, played video of the demonstrations, presented data that proved beyond reasonable doubt that Colin's technology was legitimate. Then Judith Herman took the microphone, and the temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Let's talk about what actually happened here. 3 former employees of Reddick Quantum Systems, all fired for cause over the past 2 years, made coordinated allegations of fraud. These allegations were demonstrably false, as you've just seen, but they were also clearly rehearsed and coached by someone with resources and motivation to destroy Colin Reddick's reputation. She paused for effect. We've traced the payments and coordination back to Nexus Quantum Technologies, a competing firm that realized they couldn't beat Colin's innovation through actual development, so they tried to eliminate him through character assassination instead. The room erupted in shouted questions. Judith held up a hand. We have documentation of the payments. We have testimony from one of the former employees who's cooperating with our investigation. And we have legal teams preparing both criminal and civil actions against Nexus and anyone else involved in this coordinated defamation campaign. Her smile was pure predator. The people who tried to destroy Colin Reddick's reputation through lies are about to learn a very expensive lesson about the consequences of their actions. Then it was Colin's turn. He approached the microphone feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes, dozens of cameras. The entire tech industry's attention focused on this moment. I'm not going to pretend this hasn't been a hard few days. Having your integrity questioned, your work dismissed as fraud, your reputation attacked by people willing to lie for money, it's painful. It makes you doubt yourself even when you know you're telling the truth. Colin gripped the podium. But here's what I learned through all of this. The truth doesn't need to be loud or aggressive or cruel. The truth just needs to be documented, verifiable, and persistent. We proved our technology works. We proved the allegations were false. We proved that innovation backed by integrity will always outlast attacks backed by nothing but desperation and greed. He looked directly at the cameras, knowing this would be broadcast and shared and dissected. To everyone watching who's working on something important, who's building something meaningful, who's trying to innovate in the face of entrenched interests, document everything. Protect your work. Know your worth. Don't let people exploit you, and don't let them destroy you when exploitation fails. Colin's voice strengthened. And to the companies who think they can eliminate competition through character assassination instead of actual innovation, we see you. We're documenting you, and we're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you tried to do. The applause started small but built into something thunderous. Questions flew from every direction, but Torres wrapped up the conference efficiently, promising individual interviews later but keeping control of the narrative. As they left the stage, Judith grabbed Colin's arm. That was perfect. Righteous anger without being defensive, strong without being aggressive. You're a natural at this. I just told the truth. The truth delivered well is the most powerful weapon in the world. She checked her phone. Social media is already turning. The fraud allegations are being labeled as exactly what they are, a coordinated smear campaign. Nexus Quantum is getting destroyed in the comments. Your reputation isn't just restored, it's enhanced. People love a redemption arc, and you just delivered one perfectly. Back at the lab, Colin found his team celebrating with cheap champagne someone had grabbed from a corner store. They'd been watching the press conference on a monitor, and the mood was jubilant relief mixed with exhausted triumph. Boss, you killed it, Chen said, thrusting a plastic cup into Colin's hand. Absolutely killed it. Twitter's on fire with support. Derek Hammond's getting roasted. And Nexus Quantum's stock price. They're privately held, but people are tracking their valuation based on VC disclosures. It's dropping like a stone. Maria pulled up a news feed showing the shift in coverage. Headlines had changed dramatically in just the past few hours. Reddick vindicated. Fraud allegations proven false. Competing firm behind smear campaign against quantum computing innovator. Colin Reddick's technology verified by independent engineers. The narrative had flipped completely. Colin was no longer a suspected fraudster. He was a victim of corporate malfeasance who'd fought back with truth and documentation. The underdog story everyone loved, reinforced, and strengthened. Jennifer Park appeared at Colin's elbow, her expression serious despite the celebration around them. We need to talk about next steps. Nexus is already trying to settle. They know they're screwed legally and want to make this go away quietly. They're offering a 7-figure payment and public apology. What do you recommend? Take the money, demand the apology, and make sure the terms include an admission of wrongdoing that we can publicize. We don't just win, we make sure everyone knows we won and why. Jennifer's eyes hardened. And we make sure this becomes a cautionary tale. Every company thinking about pulling similar tactics needs to know there are consequences. Colin thought about it for a moment, then nodded. Do it, but I want the money donated, cancer research, in Sarah's name. I don't want to profit from their attack. I just want to make sure they can't attack anyone else the same way. Over the next week, the pieces fell into place with a speed that felt almost dreamlike. Nexus Quantum Technologies issued a public apology and admission that they had inappropriately encouraged former Reddick Quantum Systems employees to make false allegations. The settlement money, $3.2 million, was donated to the Sarah Reddick Memorial Cancer Research Fund, a new foundation Colin established specifically for that purpose. Derek Hammond and the other fired employees faced both civil and criminal charges. They'd clearly been coached to make specific allegations in exchange for payment, which constituted conspiracy to commit fraud. Watching them face consequences felt less satisfying than Colin had expected. They were just desperate people who'd made terrible choices when someone offered them money. The real victory was making sure the company that manipulated them faced justice too. The partnership with Solvane Dynamics moved forward at full speed. Torres had been true to his word about infrastructure support. Within 2 weeks, Reddick Quantum Systems moved from their converted warehouse to a proper facility in Solvane's campus. State-of-the-art labs, clean rooms, equipment that Colin had only dreamed of accessing. His team expanded from 12 people to 40, all brilliant engineers and researchers who wanted to be part of something revolutionary. And the technology itself began reaching the world. The first medical modeling application went into beta testing at 3 major research hospitals. Early results suggested it could reduce treatment planning time from weeks to days, potentially saving lives by catching complications before they became critical. Dr. Sarah Patel from the Gates Foundation committed $20 million to expanding the medical applications with a focus on making the technology accessible in developing nations. Colin and Arya moved out of their cramped apartment into a comfortable house in a neighborhood where the streets were clean and the schools were well funded. Nothing ostentatious, Colin had watched too many tech founders lose themselves in excess, but enough space for Arya to have a proper bedroom and Colin to have a home office. They kept the furniture from the old apartment, including the wobbling table where Arya had designed the future. Some things were worth preserving. On a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after the gala, Colin sat in his new home office reviewing quarterly projections when Arya appeared in the doorway, holding her notebook and wearing an expression of barely contained excitement. "Dad, you have to see this. I finally got the entanglement ratios working for the cooling system. Look." She spread her notebook on his desk, pointing to equations that probably violated several laws of physics but somehow made perfect sense. Colin studied the work, his mind automatically checking her math, following her logic. She'd solved it. His 9-year-old daughter had actually solved a problem that professional researchers had been struggling with. "Arya, this is..." His voice caught. "This is brilliant. This is genuinely revolutionary. So we can patent it?" "We can. Your name goes on the patent as primary inventor. Your work, your credit." Colin pulled her into a hug. "Your mom would be so proud of you." "She'd be proud of both of us," Arya corrected. "You're the one who actually did all the hard stuff. I just helped with the math. The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. Colin wasn't expecting anyone, but when he opened the door, he found Richard Torres standing on his porch holding a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Colin's first car. "Hope you don't mind the surprise visit," Torres said. "I was in the neighborhood and wanted to check on my favorite partner." "You were in the neighborhood? Richard, you live 40 minutes away." "Okay, I drove out here specifically. Can I come in, or are we doing this on the porch?" Colin stepped aside, letting Torres into the house. Arya appeared from the office, saw Torres, and immediately launched into an explanation of her cooling system breakthrough. Torres listened with the genuine interest of someone who actually understood what she was talking about, asking technical questions that proved he wasn't just being polite. "Arya, this is incredible work," Torres said finally. "Mind if I borrow your dad for a few minutes? Boring business stuff." Arya retreated back to her notebook, leaving the two men in Colin's office. Torres settled into a chair and opened the wine he'd brought. First, the numbers. "We just closed a deal with 3 major hospital systems to implement your medical modeling technology. Combined revenue of $47 million over 3 years. Your 60% cut is a lot. I can do math." Colin accepted the wine glass Torres offered. "But you didn't drive 40 minutes to tell me about a deal you could have emailed." "No, I didn't." Torres took a sip of wine, considering his words. "Colin, I wanted to check on you, really check on you. You've been through hell in the past month. Public humiliation, a coordinated smear campaign, pressure that would break most people. You've handled it brilliantly, but I wanted to make sure you're actually okay and not just performing okay." The concern felt genuine, and Colin found himself answering honestly. "I'm good. Better than good, actually. Scared sometimes about what comes next, but excited too. Grateful that everything worked out." He paused, and angry, still, about how close it all came to falling apart. If Mara Vexler had been even slightly more controlled, if the dignity clause hadn't existed, if you hadn't called when you did, but she wasn't, and it did, and I did. Don't torture yourself with alternative histories. Torres leaned forward. "Colin, you want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who understood that survival in this industry requires both innovation and strategy. You built revolutionary technology, yes, but you also protected it legally, positioned yourself strategically, and refused to let people exploit you even when you desperately needed what they were offering. That combination of technical brilliance and strategic thinking is rare. It's why I wanted to partner with you. Even after the fraud allegations? Especially after. Because you didn't panic, didn't fold, didn't let the attacks destroy what you'd built. You documented the truth, proved your case, and turned a potential disaster into a demonstration of integrity." Torres smiled. "That's the kind of person I want running half my quantum computing division." They talked for another hour about plans for expansion, potential applications Colin hadn't even considered, partnerships with universities and government agencies. The future sprawled before them, vast and full of possibility that felt real rather than theoretical. As Torres was leaving, he paused at the door. "One more thing. The Innovation Awards are coming up in 6 months. I'm nominating you and Arya for the Breakthrough Technology category. You'll win, trust me. I've been on the selection committee for years. It'll be good for the company, good for publicity, good for showing the world that innovation can come from anywhere." Arya's 9 years old, and she's contributing to patents that will change the industry. Age is irrelevant if the work matters. Torres extended his hand. "Welcome to the top, Colin. Try to enjoy the view." That evening, Colin took Arya to their old neighborhood. They drove past the apartment building where they'd lived for 4 years, past the Reddick repair shop that was still operating. Colin had hired a manager and kept it running because the neighborhood needed it, past the streets where they'd struggled and survived and slowly built toward something better. "Why are we here?" Arya asked. "I wanted to remember," Colin said simply. "Wanted us to remember where we came from, who we are, what matters." They parked outside the cemetery where Sarah was buried. Colin hadn't been here since the partnership announcement, hadn't had time to process everything with the chaos of fraud allegations and press conferences and rapid expansion. Now standing beside his wife's grave with their daughter's hand in his, he felt the weight of the past month settle into something manageable. "Hi, Mom," Arya said softly, touching the headstone. "We did it. Dad's company is real. The technology is working. We're helping people just like you wanted. Colin knelt beside the grave, his hand joining Arya's on the cold marble. I kept my promise, Sarah. Built something meaningful. Protected Arya. Made sure your research, your sacrifice, your belief that innovation should help people instead of just enriching corporations. I made sure it mattered. The cemetery was quiet except for distant traffic and birdsong. Sarah didn't answer, couldn't answer, but Colin felt her presence in the warm evening air, in the strength of his daughter's hand, in the certainty that he'd honored her memory the only way that truly mattered, by refusing to give up, even when giving up would have been easier. 2 months later, the first major research paper using Reddick quantum systems medical modeling technology was published in Nature Medicine. The results were extraordinary. Cancer treatment planning times reduced by 73%. Survival rates improved by 18% in the pilot study. Side effects minimized through better drug interaction modeling. The paper's lead author specifically credited revolutionary quantum computing applications developed by Colin and Arya Reddick. The publicity was immediate and overwhelming. Every major news outlet covered the story of the father-daughter team whose technology was saving lives. Arya became something of a celebrity in educational circles, invited to speak at schools about pursuing STEM careers. Colin was offered positions at multiple universities, speaking engagements at conferences, advisory roles at companies trying to replicate his success. He turned down most of them. The work was what mattered, not the fame that came with it. But he accepted one invitation to speak at a conference for young entrepreneurs and innovators, specifically those from underprivileged backgrounds. The organizers had contacted him through Judith Herman, explaining that they wanted someone who could speak honestly about the challenges of building a company without family money or industry connections. The conference was held at a community center in a neighborhood that reminded Colin painfully of where he'd lived for years. Young people filled the seats, mostly teenagers and 20-somethings, all with that same hungry look Colin remembered wearing himself. The look of people who had ideas but no resources, brilliance but no platform, determination but no clear path forward. Colin stood at the podium, looking out at faces that could have been his own a decade ago, and abandoned the speech Judith's team had prepared. "Show of hands," he said. "How many of you have ever been told you're not smart enough, not connected enough, not wealthy enough to succeed in tech or innovation?" Every hand in the room went up. "Yeah, me too, for years. People looked at where I lived, what I drove, how I dressed, and decided I couldn't possibly have built anything worth their attention." Colin smiled grimly. "They were wrong. And the people who told you that you're not enough? They're wrong too." He talked for 40 minutes, and he didn't sugarcoat anything. Told them about the years of struggle, the times he'd considered giving up, the crushing weight of trying to innovate while also just trying to survive. But he also told them about the dignity clause, about the strategic thinking that had protected his work, about the importance of documentation and legal preparation, and never assuming that good work would protect itself. "The system isn't fair," he said bluntly. "People with money and connections have advantages you don't. They can fail repeatedly and still get funding. You might only get one shot, so you have to make it count. That's not fair, but it's reality." A young woman in the front row raised her hand. "So how do we compete? If everything's stacked against us, how do we actually win?" "By being smarter, more strategic, more prepared." Colin leaned on the podium. "You can't just be as good as people with advantages. You have to be better. Your work has to be undeniable. Your documentation has to be flawless. Your legal protections have to be airtight. You have to think 3 moves ahead, always, because people will try to exploit you the moment they think you're desperate enough to accept it." "That sounds exhausting," someone called from the back. "It is exhausting. It's unfair and exhausting and shouldn't be necessary." Colin's voice hardened. "But you know what's more exhausting? Watching people steal your work. Having your innovations credited to someone else. Spending years building something only to have it taken because you didn't protect yourself legally. I've seen it happen. I almost let it happen to me." He told them about Mara Vexler's slap, about the calculated decision to document everything, about using his own humiliation as legal leverage. Some in the audience looked shocked. Others nodded with recognition. They understood that sometimes survival required accepting small defeats to win larger victories. I'm not proud of letting someone assault me on camera, Colin admitted, but I'm proud of using that assault to protect years of work and my daughter's future. Sometimes dignity looks like fighting back. Sometimes it looks like strategic silence. You have to know the difference. A young man stood up. Mr. Reddick, what about people who can't afford lawyers, who don't have the resources to fight back legally? Document everything, every email, every conversation, every idea, every piece of work. Free documentation is your first line of defense. Take screenshots, save files, back up everything in multiple locations. When you do get resources, the documentation makes your lawyer's job easier and cheaper. Colin paused. And find people who believe in what you're building. Richard Torres partnered with me partly because the technology was good, but also because I demonstrated I could protect it. Show people you're strategic, not just brilliant, and you'll find allies. After the speech, the line of people wanting to talk to Colin stretched around the room. He stayed for 3 hours, listening to pitches and ideas and dreams, offering advice where he could, and connections where he had them. A teenager with a revolutionary battery design got connected with Jennifer Park for patent advice. A young woman with medical device innovations got Dr. Sarah Patel's contact information. A programmer with breakthrough encryption algorithms got an introduction to Solvain's security division. Colin couldn't help everyone, but he could help some, and maybe those some would help others, creating ripples that extended far beyond what he could do alone. 6 months after the gala, Colin and Aria stood backstage at the Innovation Awards ceremony, waiting for their category to be announced. Aria wore a new dress, dark blue again, her favorite color, and clutched Colin's hand tightly. "What if we don't win?" she whispered. "Then we go home and keep working. The award doesn't make the technology better or worse. It's just recognition. But it would be cool to win. It would be very cool to win." Their category was announced, and Colin's heart hammered as the presenter read through the nominees. 4 other companies, all with impressive innovations, all with teams of hundreds and funding in the hundreds of millions. And then Reddick Quantum Systems, represented by a father and daughter who'd built revolutionary technology in a converted warehouse. And the winner is... The presenter opened the envelope with theatrical slowness. Colin and Aria Reddick, Reddick Quantum Systems, for breakthrough quantum computing applications in medical treatment modeling. The applause was thunderous. Aria squeezed Colin's hand so hard it hurt, her face splitting into a smile of pure joy. They walked onto the stage together, and Colin accepted the award, a heavy crystal sculpture that caught the stage lights and threw rainbows across the floor. He looked out at the audience filled with industry leaders and innovators, at cameras broadcasting this moment to millions of people, at the physical representation of how far they'd come from that cramped apartment and wobbling table. "Thank you," he said simply. "This award isn't just for Aria and me. It's for my late wife, Sarah, whose belief that innovation should help people inspired everything we've built. It's for my team at Reddick Quantum Systems who turned crazy ideas into reality. It's for Richard Torres and Solvain Dynamics for partnering with us when others saw only risk. And it's for everyone out there working on something meaningful without resources or connections or institutional support. Keep going. Your work matters. Your struggle matters. And eventually, if you protect what you build and refuse to let people exploit you, recognition comes." He held up the award. But more important than recognition, the work itself, the lives saved, the problem solved, the future built through innovation backed by integrity. Colin's voice strengthened. Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention or require validation. Real power is revealed through actions, through results, through the quiet determination to keep building something meaningful even when the world tries to tear you down. The applause continued as they left the stage, and Colin felt Aria lean against his side, both of them exhausted and exhilarated. Later that night, back home with the award sitting on their kitchen counter, looking almost absurd in its ordinary surroundings, Colin found Aria in her room working on yet another notebook full of equations and sketches. "Shouldn't you be celebrating?" he asked from the doorway. "I am celebrating by working on the next thing." She looked up, her eyes bright with the same fire that had driven Colin for years. "Dad, I've been thinking about the quantum cooling system. What if we applied the same principles to energy storage, like quantum batteries that could charge in seconds and last for months?" Colin sat beside her, looking at the preliminary sketches that would probably become patents in a few years, innovations that would define the next generation of technology. Tell me more. They worked together until midnight, father and daughter building the future the same way they'd survived the past, with brilliance, determination, and the unshakable belief that innovation backed by integrity would always outlast exploitation backed by cruelty. The morning after the awards ceremony, Colin woke to find a letter that had been slipped under his door. No return address, just his name written in elegant handwriting on expensive paper. Inside, a brief note. Mr. Reddick, I told you things would get ugly. I'm glad you survived it, and I'm even gladder that you proved me wrong about one thing. Sometimes the good guys actually win. If you ever need a cutthroat lawyer who believes in what you're building, you have my number. Veronica Castellane. Colin smiled and tucked the letter into his desk drawer. Another connection, another potential ally, another person who'd seen him fight and decided he was worth supporting. His phone buzzed with a message from Marcus Webb. Nexus Quantum filed for bankruptcy this morning. Officially dead. We won. Then Torres, board meeting next week. We need to discuss expansion plans. Your technology is in demand everywhere. Good problems to have. Then Chen, boss, MIT wants to license our medical modeling system. Also Harvard, also Stanford. We're going to need to hire about 50 more people. The messages kept coming, each one a reminder that the struggle wasn't over. It had just shifted to different challenges, different problems, different opportunities. Success brought its own complications, its own pressures, its own risks. But looking around his home office, at the photos of Sarah that still watched over him, at Arya's notebooks stacked in proud towers, at the award that represented not just achievement, but vindication, Colin felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of rest, but the peace of purpose. The certainty that he'd honored his wife's memory, protected his daughter's future, and built something that would help people long after he was gone. The journey from that restaurant where Mara Wexler had slapped him to this moment had been brutal, terrifying, and transformative. He'd been called nothing, treated as disposable, attacked by people who thought they could destroy him through lies and money. They'd all been wrong, because Colin Reddick was never nothing. He was a father, an innovator, a strategist who understood that real power wasn't given. It was built, protected, and revealed only when absolutely necessary. The slap that was meant to humiliate him had instead launched a revolution. The woman who called him nothing had proven he was everything. And the empire that thought it could consume him had learned too late that some people couldn't be bought, broken, or dismissed. They could only be underestimated once. And that mistake, as the Wexlers and Nexus Quantum and every other predatory company that had tried to exploit desperate innovators had learned, was always fatal. Colin looked at his daughter working on the next breakthrough, at the future they were building together, at the legacy of integrity and innovation they were creating in Sarah's name. Real power didn't shout, it was revealed. And Colin Reddick's power, built on brilliance, protected by strategy, proven through adversity, was just beginning to reshape the world.